Chapter 1168. In the end, the temptation of the big, beautiful, and delicious lollipops was too great for the children. Immediately, the children's eyes lit up as they surrounded the village chief, including Chi-Chi. She also came over, grabbed her father's hand, and ran forward happily. Xian, do you want it? Zhou Shimin asked his son with a smile. How could he not want it? Little chubby Xian had been drooling for a long time. He didn't even think about it and shouted, yes. Kiki, do you want it? The village chief asked Kiki. Yes. Chi-Chi beamed with joy and clapped her hands. She stood at the front of the group happily. What about Nuoi? The village chief looked at Nuoi, who was still in his father's arms but had stopped crying. He smiled and asked him. Nuoi finally couldn't resist the lollipop's temptation and ran out with small steps. Nuoi, do you want to continue? The village chief asked with a smile. Nuoi nodded. He still hadn't broken free from his previous emotions. No matter what, the game could finally continue. However, the competition in the second round was much more intense. Poplar Fruit reacted quickly and snatched a stool for Kiki. He was eliminated. Other than teacher Lin Yongjian, there was also a father and a child from the village team who were eliminated with him. This didn't matter. He felt that the best game was for the remaining children to fight for the chairs. If the adults fought with the children, they couldn't bear to do it. Kiki, run faster. You children shouldn't huddle together. Although Poplar Fruit was eliminated, he had nothing to do. He smiled and acted as a coach for Kiki. Stool, Kiki. Poplar Fruit's reaction was always faster. After shouting, Kiki quickly found a stool and sat down. In front of her, a father helplessly waved his hand. Hu Jun was also eliminated. The children who had huddled together almost fought over a stool. Jun and Nuoi couldn't snatch it from each other. The children from the village team were the first to sit. Woo. Nuoi, who had yet to recover from his grief, felt as if his heart had been stabbed by a knife. He hugged his father and cried bitterly. The lollipop seemed to have flown away. Nuoi, it doesn't matter. As long as one of us wins, we win. We can all have lollipops to eat. Hu Jun was indeed Lu Ye's best friend. He immediately ran over to comfort Nuoi. Hearing Uncle Hu's words, Norm instantly sucked back his tears. He turned his head and looked at the field. There was still a glimmer of hope in his eyes. There was still a chance to eat a lollipop. At this time, the poplar fruit was pulled back by Kiki. The little girl who had just won the stool was very happy. She took her father's hand and said happily, "That was so close. I almost couldn't get it." "It's okay. It's okay if you can't get it. Just pay attention to your own safety." Poplar Fruit patted his daughter's shoulder and smiled. In essence, Poplar Fruit's personality was no different from his daughter's. They cared about each other and did not want each other to get hurt. However, little chubby Xian, who was beside them, was very cute. He was thinking about the two lollipops and said to his father, "Daddy, I want you to win." "Good. Daddy will definitely win." Zhou Shimin waved his hand and said with a smile. "Kiki, do your best." Another round of stool snatching began. Poplar Fruit cheered his daughter on. This time, there were only 3 chairs left. The competition was intense. Zhou Shimin said, "Kiki, Kong, let me discuss with you." He wanted to use a strategy to squeeze the villagers' fathers and children out. This way, as long as they had the advantage in numbers, they would have a huge advantage. However, Zhou Shimin had overestimated the children. Kiki was 4 years old, and the oldest, Kong Kong, was only 7 or 8 years old. How could they understand his strategy? Instead, his strategy was heard by the other party. There were still 2 adults standing there. When the drums stopped, they relied on their physical advantage to snatch the chairs. Zhou Shimin was thinking about the strategy and helping the children snatch the chairs, but he forgot to fight for the chairs himself. What about Kiki? Chi-Chi was also a step behind. No, it could not be said that she was a step behind. In front of her, a villager uncle suddenly grabbed a chair and sat on it. In this competition, Kiki was too young, so she could not compete with the villager uncle. She was stunned for a moment. Then, she pursed her lips and ran away. Kiki immediately found her father, who came to comfort her. She buried her whole body in her father's lap. Poplar Fruit could feel his daughter's low spirits. He quickly squatted down and hugged his daughter's body. He patted her trembling shoulders and said, "It's okay, it's okay. There are winners and losers in games, right? Just now, you said that you didn't want Daddy to win. It shouldn't matter if we lose this time, right?" Poplar Fruit said. Kiki shook her head. Her little face was a little red because of her tears. Her tear-stained face was very pitiful. "It's okay. There are no lollipops. Daddy will buy you some when we get back." Poplar Fruit thought his daughter was depressed because she did not have any lollipops to eat. At this time, the heartwarming uncle who went on stage again. He came over and told Kiki what he said to Nuoi. He even pointed at Kong Kong, who was the only left in her father's team. "Look, we still have one more person. We still have Brother Kong Kong. We can still win." Kiki was the same as Nuoi. She slowly woke up from her sad mood. She pursed her lips and wiped her tears in her father's arms. She looked at the field. It was Kong Kong who had stayed until the end. In the first round, Kong Kong, who felt that the game was too childish, complained to his father that he did not want to play anymore. No one expected to see him standing in the field at this time, including his father. However, at this time, the whole team's hope was on Kong Kong's weak shoulders. Kong Kong's face was tense and his expression was a little unnatural. After all, he was only a child. However, President Kong was still a cold person. Under the encouragement of village chief Li Rui, he still did not show his emotions. However, everyone could see that he really wanted to win. It was very difficult to win. He was facing 2 tall and strong villager uncles. He was alone. If the uncles did not go easy on him, Kong Kong would have no chance of winning. In fact, the uncles did not go easy on him. When the drums stopped, Kong Kong suddenly realized that there was someone sitting in front of him. Victory was close at hand, but it was so far away. President Kong happily turned around and walked towards his father. He was hugged by his father. The hearts of the domineering President Kang's fans were broken. They all criticized the uncles on the internet for being too serious. They did not know how to go easy on their children. However, this also showed the authenticity of the program. Moreover, the fans really could not blame the uncles. They were also parents. Their children were also by their side just now. They also wanted to eat the delicious lollipops. Even if they were to give up their dignity and compete with Kong Kong, they still had to fight for the fruits of victory for their children. Parents in the world were pitiful, weren't they? Although that was the case, at this moment, the main characters were the cute children of the father's team. It was Kong Kong, and it was Kiki. Their performance after losing tightly grasped the hearts of the audience. Chapter 1169. Great, son, you're great. Hero who hugged his son. Although his face was calm, anyone could see that he loved his son dearly. However, Kong Kong was also strong. Just like his father, he hid his feelings deep in his heart. Although he wanted to cry, although he didn't have the strength to lean on his father, he didn't cry out loud like the other children. Sigh, that was close. Kong Kong sighed faintly. He wanted to say, what a pity, or just a little bit more, but at that moment, anyone could understand the chaos in his heart. It's okay, I think you succeeded. You sat down at the same time as the other person. Hu Jun hugged his son's arms and said. Everyone nodded. In this game, everyone saw Kong Kang's performance. Usually, he didn't appear in the camera, but every time it was a crucial moment, Kong Kong could show a different side of him. His outstanding side made people praise him. Tears are coming out. Kong Kong said in a low voice. After losing, his heart still felt very uncomfortable. He wouldn't cry like the other children, but he still couldn't help but shed a few drops of tears. However, he was also very prideful. Just like what Hu Jun said in an interview, he didn't want others to see his weakness. He didn't want others to think that he cried because he couldn't afford to lose. No one knew Kong Kong better than Hu Jun. Hu Jun used his hand to wipe his son's tears, and then deliberately said to his son in a rough voice, "It's okay, it's just sand, right? Dad will blow it for you." Hu Jun held his son's face and blew on both sides of his eyes. It really looked like sand had gotten into his eyes. After giving the stubborn Kong Kong a way out, he forced a smile. The relationship between the father and son was a little interesting. Usually, they were a little distant, but in reality, they cared about each other. Or maybe they were more like brothers. However, Poplar Fruit couldn't coax Kiki like this because Kiki was different from Kong Kong. She was a girl, and a girl much younger than Kong Kong. Seeing that Kong Kong didn't win, Kiki's emotions immediately collapsed again. She cried in her father's arms. It doesn't matter. A loss is a loss. If there's a chance in the future, we can win it back. Poplar Fruit comforted his daughter with a smile. He grabbed the little girl's hands that had been rubbing her tears and said, "You can't rub your eyes. You haven't washed your hands, so there are bacteria on your hands. Your eyes will itch if you rub them." However, Kiki still pouted and cried. Poplar Fruit put her on his lap and took out a tissue to wipe her tears. In the past, Poplar Fruit never carried tissues with him. But ever since Kiki was born, other than his phone and wallet, he always carried some things that Kiki might use. When Kiki was still young, there was a time when he took out a pack of diapers from his wallet when he was eating out. The diapers looked like a woman's menstrual products, causing Poplar Fruit to be stared at strangely by the men around him. "Kiki, Papa will teach you an idiom today. Although defeated, it's still honorable." Poplar Fruit wiped his daughter's tears and said, "It means that if we try hard and struggle but still fail in the end, then there's no need to be sad. Moreover, we should feel honored for the experience that we've tried so hard to have. But I want to win the lollipop. Then I want to eat it with Papa." It turned out that Kiki had a small wish hidden in her heart, a wish that was so beautiful that it made the afternoon sun gentle. It turned out that she not only wanted the lollipop for herself, but also wanted to share it with her father. There was another point that Poplar Fruit neglected just now. Why would Kiki be so sad because of a game? That was because the little girl thought that she, who was invincible in the kindergarten, would be able to win this game. Then, from the beginning, she held very high expectations, and then her expectations were shattered, which made her feel too sudden, too confused, and too helpless. Poplar Fruit was moved. He opened his mouth wide and was stunned for a while. Then, he lovingly stroked his daughter's hair and said, "That's great, Kiki. Your idea is really great. Kiki, you know. Dad is really happy that you can think like this." Poplar Fruit said softly, "However, What makes Dad happy is not that I can eat the lollipop, but that my daughter can be so sensible and wants to win good things through hard work to share with Dad. It doesn't matter if you don't succeed this time. You're still young. Right? One day, Dad's favorite good daughter will definitely share something better with Dad, right? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Kiki nodded vigorously. Her two small arms hugged her father's neck. Her eyes were hazy with tears, but she smiled through her tears. Her smile was like a blooming epiphyllum, and her white teeth were so clear that it shook the hearts of the audience. However, the surprise was always at the end. Because the program team had actually prepared a lot of lollipops, although they were all given to the winning village team, they immediately asked the villagers' children to send them to the cute children of the father's team. Wow! Kiki, look, the little sister is here to send you a lollipop. Poplar Fruit shouted at Kiki, whose long eyelashes were still hanging with dew. He didn't know whether the other party was a younger sister or an older sister, but Kiki was much taller than the other party, so she could be considered a younger sister for the time being. This reason was not very convincing. The little girl looked at the little sister who handed over the lollipop and was a little stunned, not understanding what was going on. Weren't there no more lollipops? You see, after the little sister won, she wanted to share this lollipop with you. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Aren't you going to thank the little sister?" Kiki finally understood. She took it, leaned on her father a little shyly, and said sweetly, "Thank you. I'm very grateful." No need to thank me." The little sister was even more nervous than her. After handing over the lollipop, she quickly turned around and ran away. "Come, let's share it with all the children." Lin Yongjian waved his hand and called out. Thus, Poplar Fruit, Lin Yongjian, and the other fathers who took the lollipops all broke the lollipops. Although they didn't look as good as the previous lollipops, they let Kiki and the other children take them to share with the other villagers' children. This lollipop tasted extra sweet. After sharing, Kiki took out 2 very small pieces of lollipops from the bag and happily ran back to her father's side. "Papa, 1 piece, Kiki, 1 piece." Kiki made her father open his mouth wide, and then stuffed a piece of lollipop into his mouth. As a result, Poplar Fruit quickly sucked her finger in his mouth, tickling Kiki until she couldn't stop giggling. Victory may be beautiful, but failure is not necessarily not a happy ending, is it? Chapter 1170. The 3 competitions in the afternoon were over, but there was still an hour or 2 before sunset, so now it was time for the last part of the evening, making dinner. Cooking was Poplar Fruit's strength. Although the media had not reported it, it was a fact after all. If they really competed in cooking, Poplar Fruit's cooking skills could be said to be the best. It was even possible for him to take the title of the best cook in the history of Papa Go. Therefore, when it came to making dinner, Poplar Fruit and his daughter rubbed their palms together eagerly. Especially Chi-Chi, she even happily ran to the front of the village chief, raised her still somewhat red little face, and said, "Village chief, my papa's cooking is super delicious, why don't you come to our house to eat?" Everyone was amused by Chi-Chi's words that were filled with childlike innocence. The village head patted Kiki's shoulder with a smile and said, "Thank you, but we will only cook separately. In the end, we will still have to gather together to eat together." "Really? That's great," Kiki said happily, "then I can invite all my friends to eat the delicious food my father makes." Of course, Poplar Fruit could not cook all the dishes. This was not a cooking show, so each father could only choose the most famous local dish to make. Wait a minute, local dish. Poplar Fruit had an ominous feeling before Kiki chose her task card. What's this? Hu Jun, who had been praying that he would get scrambled eggs and tomatoes, saw that his son had drawn the most complicated Sesame Blossom Festival. He could only smile bitterly and said to the other fathers, "This is impossible." Poplar Fruit knew about the dish. It was a very famous pasta dish in the western Shaanxi area, but it was very complicated and needed the most ingredients. Not to mention Hu Jun, Poplar Fruit thought it would be a very big challenge. Let's not worry about other people's business first. Poplar Fruit wanted to see what dish his daughter got. Minced noodles. Oh my God. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly. He finally knew what his bad premonition was. Wheaten food. In the northwest region, people rarely ate rice. They ate wheaten food the most. Poplar Fruit was indeed good at cooking. Many domestic dishes were easily mastered by Poplar Fruit. However, this noodle Poplar Fruit was the only exception. He didn't know how to make noodles. Moreover, the minced meat noodles were dishes that he had never cooked before, since he lived in Guangdong province. Not to mention noodles, even the steamed buns, youtiao, and Poplar Fruit were all bought from outside. When had he ever used flour? It was as if. What is this? Kiki pulled her father's hand curiously. Looking at the pattern on it, she said innocently, "It looks delicious." "Do you think it's delicious?" Poplar Fruit asked his daughter with a bitter smile. Kiki nodded, pulled her father's clothes, and said with a smile, "I think it's delicious. Papa's cooking is even better." Okay. There was no other way. Poplar Fruit looked around and found that the drawings in the hands of the 5 fathers were almost all for wheaten food. For example, the Nuo family's hat, which was actually a steamed bun, the Xianxian family's rujiamo, and the only family that didn't have noodles or steamed buns, Dajuan's potato rub was also dipped in flour. There was no better choice. Since his daughter wanted to eat the minced meat noodles he made, Poplar Fruit could only nod with a bitter smile. The only thing that was worth being happy about was that the task card had a detailed explanation of the cooking process. If he followed it, he should be able to do it, right? Poplar Fruit really didn't have confidence in the noodle food. Looking at his daughter's excitement, Poplar Fruit was a little worried that he wouldn't do well and make her lose confidence in him. Poplar Fruit suddenly felt a lot of pressure. Like the previous 2 seasons, the first step of cooking dinner required the children to leave their father to find ingredients. First, they were divided into groups. Kangkang and Nuo formed a team. Kiki, Dajuan, and Xianxian formed a team. With his sister. Little chubby Xian was so excited that he danced with joy. He didn't even pay attention to what his father said. "I'm really worried about them." Teacher Lin also sighed. They were all 3, 4, and 5 years old children. Would they be able to take on the task of finding ingredients for their fathers? The production team was really too much. For the sake of gimmick, their fathers, they let Kangkang take Nuo Yi. The 2 children were considered older, but let the second oldest, Dajuan, take Kiki and Xianxian. Wasn't this a joke? Luckily, Poplar Fruit was more confident in Kiki's ability. He called over the 2 fathers, Zhou Shimin and Lin Yongjian, and had them read out all the ingredients to be collected to Kiki. "Daddy wants pork, flour, eggs, and vegetables. Poplar Fruit isn't picky. Kiki won't understand anyway. Brother Dajuan wants potatoes, yams, and onions." Poplar Fruit repeated, "Brother Xianxian wants pork, flour, and onions. Kiki, do you remember?" Chi-Chi nodded vigorously and repeated her father's words word for word. She could feel her father's trust in her, and her heart was overjoyed. "That's good. Later, you and Brother Xianxian will follow Brother Dajuan. Listen to Brother Dajuan's instructions and then pick up everyone's things. Then, come back to find Daddy, okay?" Poplar Fruit held his daughter's small hand and smiled. Kiki nodded again. "Are you scared? It's the first time you're leaving Daddy to do a mission by yourself." Poplar Fruit asked worriedly. I'm a little scared. Kiki twisted in her father's arms, but still said, but I know that Daddy wants me to do a mission. I can't be like Brother Kimmy who doesn't dare to leave Daddy. That's not good. Yes, but Daddy also wants you to be careful and complete the mission with Brother Dajuan and Brother Xianxian. Then, Daddy will wait for your triumphant return, okay? Poplar Fruit was very grateful for his daughter's understanding. He kissed his daughter's small hand and said with a smile. Okay. Kiki giggled and kissed her father's face. Be sure to come back soon. Poplar Fruit finally revealed some of his worries. He couldn't help but say, Daddy will wait for you. I know. Kiki ran to Xianxian and Dajuan's side, then turned back and smiled at her father. Dajuan, you hold brother and sister's hand. You have to work together. Lin Yongjian said. I want to hold sister's hand. However, Xianxian looked at Dajuan's left hand holding her and his right hand holding sister's hand. There was Brother Dajuan between her and sister, and she was suddenly unhappy. Then Brother Dajuan and I will hold your hand. Kiki went around and held Xuanxuan's hand with Dajuan. Her youngest brother was finally happy. His little chubby face was filled with a happy smile. The sun was already setting, but the children were just about to face their first real challenge since joining Where's Daddy Going? Chapter 1171. Poplar Fruit watched the three little ones disappear from the asphalt road in front of him for a long time before looking away. Where are we going now? Do we have a mission? The few fathers looked at the program crew. There's no mission. All of you go home and rest. When the children come back, we can start cooking. The program crew's director said. However, Lu Yi, Hu Jun, the two of you go to Hu Jun's room. We want to film a video of the two of you chatting. A flock of crows flew across the sky. Lu Yi and Hu Jun were speechless. The rest of the people were stunned for a moment before laughing out loud. The program crew was really ruthless. How awkward would it be to let the two of them stay in a room alone? Besides, the two of them were not people who liked to chat. Everyone could already imagine the two of them looking at each other in the room. Ignoring the father's dilemma, the camera panned to the children. By their father's side, the children's behavior was considered normal. However, once they left their father's side, the situation went out of control. There are chicks. Xianxian exclaimed as if she had discovered a new continent. Dejun and Kiki also looked over. It turned out that there was a cardboard box in the courtyard. There were more than 10 chicks chirping inside. When they saw the big-faced Xianxian come in, they were so scared that they huddled together. We also have chicks at home. Kiki said. Actually, when she was at her grandmother's house in the countryside, she had asked Brother Shao Jia to help her raise a chick. However, Poplar Fruit did not dare to tell her that after the chick grew up, it was cooked in soup and eaten by the family. But our chicks are yellow. Kiki said, this is the first time I've seen black chicks. With Kiki's explanation, the children felt that this nest of chicks was very magical. There were so many black chicks. They were so cute. Everyone surrounded the group of chicks and looked at them for a long time. Kiki suddenly woke up from this atmosphere. Her little head suddenly remembered that her father was still anxiously waiting for her at home. Once you're done collecting the ingredients, come back to me. I'll be waiting for you at home. Poplar Fruit's voice echoed in Kiki's mind. Kiki's big eyes blinked and immediately became clear. She tugged at her two little friends and said anxiously, Brother Dajuan, Brother Xianxian, let's go look for ingredients. However, the effect was minimal. The cute chicks were firmly grasping Dejun and Xianxian's line of sight. Kiki anxiously stomped her feet. Finally, she raised her voice and shouted a little angrily, stop playing. Being yelled at by his sister in such an angry manner, Xian quivered and hurriedly walked towards his sister. However, Dejun still looked at Chick with some reluctance before turning around and leaving. It's not a game. Dejun habitually defended himself. This was not a good habit. However, if they didn't play, what should they do? Xian and Dejun looked at each other. Xian didn't know anything, while Dejun was too shy to know what to do. Well, Kiki, who was familiar with the rules of the game, had to be the one to do it. She took the lead and walked past Brother Dajun and Brother Xian. She walked towards the villager's aunt who was smiling honestly. This scene surprised the program crew and the audience. Although Kiki was tall, she was very young. She was only a few months older than Brother Xian. Moreover, she was still a girl. She was actually the one who took the lead. Of course, Kiki acted bravely, but she was still a child. When facing strangers, she lacked confidence and would be afraid to retreat. The moment she opened her mouth, Kiki's voice became much softer. Hello, can you give us some flour? What did you say? The villager's aunt's Mandarin was not very good. Moreover, Kiki's voice was so soft that it sounded like words. She looked at the staff in embarrassment. However, the staff had no intention of helping. They just followed to protect and film. All the actions were done by the children themselves. The first time she lacked confidence, but the second time, Kiki was much better. After all, she had friends with her, and there were so many uncles and aunties from the program crew. The little girl asked in a clear voice, Do you have flour? We all need flour. The audience with sharp ears could hear the difference. Kiki's accent was slightly different. Although it was still far from the local villager's accent, there was a faint Shaanxi accent. However, this was not obvious, so no one paid much attention to it. Kiki's team was much luckier than Kong Kang's team. Kong Kang's team went to several houses without finding any ingredients. Kiki's team quickly got flour from the first house. All three of us want flour. Kiki's memory was very clear. She looked up and said to the villager's aunt. Thus, Kiki and Dejun both got flour. Wait. Where's Xian? Xian followed Kiki with a look of worship. He was like a little follower. He jumped around Kiki's sister and said casually, All three of us want flour. Yes. What a big piece. Kiki happily held the bag of flour. She was thinking about what delicious food her father would make for her. And it must be very, very delicious. Xian, what about you? The staff member didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had no choice but to remind them. Right, where's Xian's? Xian was empty-handed. He looked at Kiki's sister and Dejun's brother who were both holding a bag of flour. My flour. My flour. Xian scratched his head and looked at the big bag of flour in Kiki's sister's hand. He thought that his sister would help him get it. It could be seen that at home, little chubby Xian was the kind that was doted on by his parents. Kiki was fine. Although Poplar Fruit doted on her, Poplar Fruit himself came from a village. Moreover, he had a Fong Bebe who knew how to educate children. The two of them didn't spoil Kiki too much. Some things, Kiki would let her do it herself if it was within her capabilities. Simple tasks like washing fruits were usually taken care of by Kiki at home. You can get it yourself. Kiki blinked her big eyes. She didn't understand Xian's idea. From Kiki's point of view, the process of finding ingredients in the previous 2 seasons was done by the children themselves. Xian then turned back to ask the villager's aunt. The villager's aunt was very nice. She gave Xian a lot of flour. He said that he wanted the same amount as his sister. Okay. Xian brother also got it. Kiki waited for everyone to gather. She smiled happily and said, let's go to the next house, okay? Papa is waiting for us at home. Yesterday, Xiao Han had a cold and coughing, but he insisted on writing. Friends, please give Xiao Han more monthly votes to comfort him. Carrot oh carrot. Chapter 1172. In the first season, there was Lu Zi who was like the wind. The scene of her running in the wind was loved by many of the audience. And this season, because of Kiki's appearance, it was destined that this classic would appear again. Kiki inherited her father's excellent genes. In addition to a pair of strong and long legs, she also had excellent athletic nerves like an athlete. With the combination of these two, a figure like a deer appeared on the screen. Her delicate figure and speed were like the wind. In a flash, she left the cameraman behind. The audience was both surprised and delighted. Not only were they delighted, they were also surprised because from the beginning of the program recording, all the audience members thought that Chi-Chi was a cute little princess. Although they all liked her, her delicate and lovable image was deeply rooted in their hearts. They didn't expect her to be so lively and energetic, and it gave the audience a huge shock. In fact, this was all because she missed her father. Although less than 20 minutes had passed, to Kiki, it was as if she had been away from her father for an entire day. She couldn't wait to finish the task and return to her father's side. However, when Kiki started running, Dejun and Xian couldn't keep up. Dejun wasn't too far behind, but Xian's short legs couldn't run fast. He held the flower in one hand like he was holding a torch, and waved the other hand like he was rowing an oar. Despite risking his life, he could only watch as Chi-Chi's older sister ran further and further away. Kiki didn't hear the calls of her two friends. She ran to the top of the hill and only had time to look back. She realized that brother Dejun and brother Xian had been left behind by her. Papa said to help my friends. Kiki thought in her heart and ran back to Xian, who was the furthest behind. However, Kiki ran very fast and was only slightly out of breath. Her refreshed appearance was a sharp contrast to Xian, who was in a difficult situation. Let me help you carry it. Kiki reached out for brother Xian's flower. She held a bag in one hand and said eagerly, come on, let's continue running. We have to finish the task quickly. Papa is waiting for us. But sister Kiki, I can't run anymore. Xian pouted as he panted heavily. He didn't feel tired, but little fatty Xian was used to slacking off. I can't run that fast either. Dejun turned around and nodded. But our papa is waiting for us. Kiki bit her lower lip and twisted her body. She was a little anxious, but she couldn't be anxious with brother Xian. After a while, she said, brother Xian, your papa is the champion. It should be very powerful, right? At this moment, Xian's eyes were filled with the beautiful figure of Kiki's sister. Through his sister, he could feel the anticipation in her eyes. It was a magical power that could cheer up Xian, who admired his sister. Okay, let's go quickly. Sister, let's go quickly. Xian didn't slack off and started running. Dejun hurriedly threw away the flower bag in his hand and followed him. Ha, brother Xian, you're also very powerful. Kiki held 2 bags of flour and ran as if they were nothing. She happily ran to Xian's side and praised him sincerely. What about me? Brother Dejun is also very powerful. The 3 innocent children were like small horses galloping, stepping on the flying yellow dust. Under the bright light of the evening sun, they quickly turned into the courtyard of the second house. The children were at an energetic age. Such a lively scene made the audience in front of the TV couldn't help but think of their own childhood. It was really a precious time. Hello. It was Kiki who politely greeted. After her first experience, she was much bolder this time. She directly went to the villager's aunt and asked with familiarity, "Do you have meat? What kind of meat do you want?" The villager's aunt was a little embarrassed to look at the camera. She slightly turned around and asked Kiki. "I want pig meat." Kiki turned around and pointed at Xianxian. She said, he. The production team mischievously edited the clip here, making the audience laugh. Pig meat, or Xianxian's meat. We feel a deep sense of malice. Of course, everyone was complaining about the program's malice. The program continued. It turned out that Kiki paused and said, "He also wants meat, and he also wants pig meat." "Yes, I also want meat." Xianxian nodded furiously. He was his sister's most loyal follower. "I also want meat." June interrupted. His small single eyelid eyes were exactly the same as his father's. "Brother June, you don't want meat." Kiki blinked her big eyes in confusion. She clearly remembered that her father said that Brother June wanted potatoes, yams, and onions. "But I like meat," June said. "Then give Brother June some meat too." Kiki turned around and said to the villager's aunt without a firm stance. "Okay. Right away." Kiki was quite lucky because she met a very enthusiastic family. Moreover, the whole family of the second family came out. The villager's aunt cut some meat for Kiki, pig meat. Then the villager's grandmother came over with a smile and hugged Kiki. She asked, "Do you want anything else?" "I also want vegetables, green vegetables," Kiki explained. Her soft voice was very pleasant. Kiki followed the villager's grandmother to the kitchen to pick vegetables. The villager's grandmother found a big basket and filled it with vegetables for her. Actually, father didn't specifically mention poplar fruit. He knew that his daughter didn't know much, so the villager's grandmother picked a little of everything for her. Cabbage, spinach, mustard. Suddenly, the basket was filled to the brim. The villager's grandmother helped Kiki carry it out. Kiki was busy, but June and Xianxian outside forgot their mission and played with the chickens in the yard. This time, they were no longer chickens. They didn't dare to touch them, but they were very curious and looked at them from the side. It was as if they were pecking and running, and every movement was full of attraction. "There are also onions, potatoes, yams," Kiki said one by one. The villager's grandmother also patiently took one by one for her. During the process, Kiki, who was going in and out of the kitchen, didn't notice that June and Xianxian actually learned to feed the chickens with vegetable stems. They took out several intact vegetable leaves from the basket. These were the fruits of Kiki's hard work. Anyway, the satisfaction of completing the mission made Kiki ignore these small problems. In the end, she took an egg from the villager's grandfather. "Papa only said that we want eggs." She carried the big basket with both hands and happily announced to her friends, "We got it." Although only a faint afterglow was left from the setting sun, Kiki's face was filled with the joy of success. Her tired and happy smile immediately warmed the eyes of the audience. Chapter 1173. Papa's task has been completed. I have to hurry back and tell Papa, Kiki thought happily. She carried the big basket with both hands and didn't feel tired at all. Of course, Chi-Chi's strength was great, but it wasn't to the point where she could effortlessly lift such a large basket of ingredients that even an adult would find difficult to carry. However, because she was thinking about her father at the moment, she didn't complain about being tired. "Did you get it all?" Xianxian was the first to react. He asked in a childish voice. "I've got it all." Kiki walked with big strides. In the blink of an eye, she was at the entrance of the courtyard. She didn't even turn her head as she said, "Hurry up, we should go home." Remember, my things are here. Brother Dejun also came back to his senses. He turned around and chased after Kiki. Right, Brother Dejun's words reminded Xian. He had just given the flower to Sister Kiki. Thus, little chubby Xian followed behind his brother and sister. He imitated Brother Dejun and said, "Remember, my things are also inside." N. Kiki walked forward with big strides. She said with some difficulty, "Let's go home quickly." Just like that, Chi-Chi walked for a while before she stopped in her tracks with an "Aya." It wasn't that she couldn't carry it, but she felt that it was very awkward to carry such a big basket. Moreover, it kept bumping into her leg. It was a little painful and a little tired. That's not right. Why am I the only one carrying it? Kiki pouted. She remembered that in the first 2 seasons, Brother Tian and Sister Sendai, Sister Duo and Brother Joe, they would all help each other. Who's going to help me carry it? Kiki looked at the uncle who was carrying the big camera and then looked at Brother Dejun who was empty-handed. I'll help you carry it. Dejun immediately understood and shouted as he ran over. I have to carry it with both hands. Kiki and Dejun walked in circles around the basket. They couldn't find a good position no matter how they twisted and turned. One moment, Dejun felt uncomfortable walking upside down, and the next moment, he turned around and became Kiki walking upside down. His clumsy appearance made the audience laugh uncontrollably. I can't. I'll take this side and you take that side. Kiki turned around again and looked at Big Brother Dajun's hand. Big Brother Dajun was holding the beam with one hand and scratching his butt with the other. Kiki and Dejun struggled on the yellow dirt road for a while, but they were still at a loss. Dejun didn't have any opinions of his own, so he only looked at Kiki in confusion. Helpless, Kiki could only look at the uncles and aunties in the production crew and said weakly, "Help us get it, okay?" Kiki's voice became softer and softer. It was neither clear nor pleasant to the ears, but it was as gentle as a small hand brushing against the cheeks of the audience. She was also tired. However, the uncles and aunties were determined to let the children solve their own problems. Where's Brother Xian? Kiki looked around, trying to find another backup. That's right, where's Xian? How did he disappear in the blink of an eye? It turned out that Princess's piggy knight had forgotten about Princess. As he walked, his attention was attracted by a puppy in someone's yard. Woof, woof. Woof, woof. Little chubby Xian and the puppy were having fun barking at each other. Alright, it seemed like the most loyal follower couldn't be counted on. Kiki could only continue to move a dozen meters with Dejun. Big Brother Dajun, don't walk over there. You'll slip and it's very dangerous. Kiki's reminder appeared on the screen from time to time. Yes, it felt more strenuous than before. On one hand, her walking posture was even weirder, and on the other hand, she had to take care of Big Brother Dajun who didn't know how to carry a basket. Kiki pouted and looked back anxiously. She didn't know that Xian, who had just signed the agreement to fight another day with the puppy, had just left the battlefield in a hurry. I'll do it myself. Kiki said helplessly to Big Brother Dajun. Kiki struggled to lift the basket. She felt that it was okay, she could carry it. Although there were 3 families worth of food in it. Then I'll help you carry some. Dajun was a kind-hearted child. As he walked, he scratched his head and felt that he couldn't help. After thinking for a while, he took out a few bags of food from the basket. Big Brother Dajun, let's go quickly. Papa is waiting for us. Kiki was panting as she trotted forward. She could actually carry such a big basket of food. This made the audience in front of the TV stunned. When they reached the intersection, Xian finally caught up with them. He was excitedly shouting along the way, Big Sister Kiki. Big Sister Kiki. He didn't know that his favorite Big Sister Kiki was fighting with the basket and didn't have the energy to respond to his calls. But Xian was still happy. His voice was a little hoarse as he told Big Sister Kiki and Big Brother Dajuan about the puppy he just saw. We also have puppies at home. My grandpa's house has many, many puppies. Kiki was a little interested in this topic. She panted and said, I really like puppies. Well, Kiki was indeed a little tired. Her speech was a little incoherent. Kiki, I'm going over there. My home is over there. Dajuan suddenly stopped. He turned around in a daze and said after looking for a while. I'm going home too. The puppy in Kiki's mind immediately jumped out and was stuffed by her favorite father. My home is over there. Then, they began to divide the food in the basket. What Dajuan needed was actually very simple. It was potatoes, yams, and onions. Right, there was also meat. This is my meat. He quickly put it into a bag. Kiki also flipped through her own food. But she found that she had a lot of food. Vegetables, 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 she had to take the basket back. Xian was the most confused. He followed the crowd and took his food. No, he only took the bag of flour that he personally asked for. Then it spilled. Little Chu Xian held the bag of flour in a silly manner. He didn't know where the beginning and the end were. He only looked at the flour that kept spilling out and became anxious. Mine, it's going to rot. Little Chu Xuan's hoarse and helpless voice sounded. As he flipped the bag, more and more flour appeared on the screen. Ha, ha. The audience laughed until their stomachs cramped. They really weren't gloating. It was just that little Chu Xuan's actions of not knowing what to do and making more and more mistakes were too cute and too funny. Not to mention the audience, even the camera was shaking. Maybe the cameraman was also holding back his laughter. Dajuan scratched his butt and laughed foolishly. But at this time, no one was paying attention to him. Mine is going to rot. My flour. Xian was helpless. His hoarse voice, childish tone, and depressed expression made people want to jump into the TV and help this little fool pick up the bag of flour. But, it really spilled out on the ground. Chapter 1174. The bag of flour was rotten, and the white flour spilled all over the ground, covering Xian's sneakers and the original color of the yellow road. What should I do? There's not much flour left. Xian pouted in annoyance. He instinctively squatted down, and his two chubby little hands gently dug at the ground, as if he wanted to save the flour that had slipped. Little Chu Xian picked up the flour on the ground and gathered it in one hand. His pitiful appearance made people want to laugh and feel sorry for him. Don't eat the things that fall on the ground. Kiki also squatted down worriedly to accompany Xian. She didn't know what to do with the flour spilled. After all, a child's mind wasn't as thoughtful as an adult's. Xian didn't hear what Kiki said. He grabbed a handful of flour and sand and stuffed it into the rotten bag of flour. This scene made Dajuan laugh foolishly. He was also digging at the flour and sand like Xian, but he was playing. Don't be like this. Kiki finally noticed Dajuan's expression. She said unhappily, look at him, he's already so pitiful. Yeah. Dajuan thought that the word pitiful was used well, and he laughed out loud. Not only Kiki, but the audience in front of the TV also frowned. It wasn't good to take pleasure in someone's misfortune like this. What's so funny? Kiki was angry this time. She pouted and said angrily, Dajuan. Chi-Chi's voice had already risen. She was actually angry. Everyone thought that Kiki was always happy and carefree with her father, and that she was a cute little princess with no temper. However, she really knew how to get angry, and when she got angry, it was quite scary. Chi-Chi stood up and pouted. Her little face was taut as she looked at Big Brother Dejun unhappily. This aura caused Dejun's smiling face to instantly freeze. He cowered a little as he avoided Chi-Chi's eyes that were filled with justice, as if he had really done something wrong just now. He didn't dare to meet Chi-Chi's eyes. Dejun wasn't the only one who was shocked. This made him break free from the annoyance of spilling flour. He stood helplessly at the side, as if he had done something wrong. Brother Xian is so pitiful. Kiki learned to reason from her father. She pouted and said, "How can you laugh at him? We are good friends. Good friends should comfort and help their brother when he's in trouble. You can't laugh at others." Chi-Chi concluded. Pleasant sheep will never laugh at lazy sheep. Xian, Dejun was actually a very child. He's Xian, it's okay, I'm fine. Xian frantically waved his hands that were stained with flour. He listened from the side and felt that he had done something wrong. It was scary to be scolded by Sister Kiki. But my flour is rotten. Xian looked at the bag of flour on the ground and said dejectedly. It's okay, I can share some with you. Kiki thought for a moment. She took out a bag from the basket and took out the onions. Then, she carefully poured her flour into it. Brother Xian, I can share some with you too. I can't eat so much flour. Dejun also reached out to help. Finally, with the help of his friends, Xian poured his remaining flour into the bag. Yes, he poured it in. All the children didn't realize that the flour couldn't be eaten because Xian had mixed it with sand when he was cleaning it up. The program team didn't intend to tell the children about this, nor did they remind them of other things that they had missed. Everything that was still under control was left to the children. Because of Sister Kiki's help, Xian's scary image of Sister Kiki when she was angry was swept away. All that was left was the angelic and beautiful Sister Kiki. Okay, I'm going back to find Papa. Kiki clapped her hands and picked up the basket in her hand. Finally, she reminded Xian, take care of the bag. Don't ruin it again. I'm going home to find Papa too. Dejun also said goodbye to his friends. At this fork in the road, they were going to go home and find their own Papa. Xian was still a little confused. He looked at Sister Kiki's back and couldn't help but move forward, as if he wanted to go home with her. But Sister Kiki just said, Xian, you have to go home to find your Papa. Your Papa is waiting for you very anxiously. Wait a minute, something's wrong. Xian raised his left chubby hand and looked at the bag of flour in his hand and the empty hand on his right. Where's my food? Xian's hoarse voice sounded. He began to worry. I haven't gotten my food yet. Sister Kiki. Little Xian began to move his short legs and wanted to chase after her. But how could he catch up with Sister Kiki, who was anxious to go home? She carried the basket and ran far, far away. She was a girl who chased after the wind. Woo, Sister Kiki won't help me. I haven't gotten my food yet. Xian panted unhappily when he couldn't see Sister Kiki's figure. So in the end, he still had to find it himself. Xian grabbed the bag of flour in his hand and walked back a little dejectedly. But when it rains, it pours. Maybe it was because he didn't hold the bag of flour tightly when he was running, the flour actually spilled on the ground again. Xian looked at his flour pitifully and was a little desperate. Who's going to help me? Xian picked up the flower on the ground as the image of Sister Kiki who helped him righteously appeared in his mind. I'm going to find Sister. This kind of obsession was repeated over and over again, but the flower on the ground could not be picked up no matter how hard he tried. Xian. If one were to say that Xian had witnessed Chi-Chi's angelic and beautiful heart today, then Xian's father's voice from afar would be another heavenly voice filled with hope. Did you find what Dad wanted? Zhou Shimin was worried and ran over to find his son. Xian immediately became spirited. His mood changed very quickly and he immediately raised the bag of flour in his hand and said in a childish voice, I only found a bag of flour. Only a bag of flour. It's okay, you're already good enough. Zhou Shimin laughed. But when he picked up Xian's bag of flour and looked at it, he couldn't laugh anymore. No way. This is cement. Isn't it? The white flour was mixed with yellow sand. It couldn't be eaten. Xian's task was not completed yet, but Zhou Shimin didn't want his son to give up. He wanted to encourage him to continue the task of finding ingredients. Daddy wants to make you a very, very delicious dish tonight. But Dad wants you to. Before Zhou Shimin finished, Xian became spirited. Okay. He jumped up from his squatting position and turned around to look for ingredients. Good, that's great. Zhou Shimin was very surprised by his son's perseverance. He immediately switched to his hot-blooded buddy mode and stood up. He pointed at his son and said generously, Dad is waiting for you here. Hurry up. Go. Xian's blood was boiling. He ran for a distance with his short legs, but then he turned around and said with a pout, I want Sister. What? Zhou Shimin was dumbfounded. Chapter 1175. What? Didn't you just want to go and look for ingredients in a spurt of energy? Zhou Shimin was annoyed and amused by his son's personality. He could only persuade him, don't think about your sister now. Think about what we are going to eat tonight, okay? I want to go with my sister. Xian wanted to do the mission with his sister Kiki. For little Chuangshuan, in this world, only good food and a beautiful sister could not be let down. And the beautiful sister was even more important than good food. Take it back and we will go find your sister. Hurry up. Zhou Shimin said helplessly. No, I want to do it now. Little Chuangshuan said stubbornly. Come on. After we finish eating, we will go find your sister. Let's go quickly. The faster we go, the sooner we can see your sister. Hurry up. In the end, little Chuangshuan still tried his best to find ingredients. Looking at his short legs running so hard, the audience was moved. Seeing his son run around the corner, Zhou Shimin said to the camera sourly, Wow, he really thinks that your sister is more important than me. He didn't even look back and disappeared in front of my eyes. I have to complete the mission and then find my sister. Xian ran energetically towards the house where he remembered asking for flour. This time, Xian relied on his own efforts to get the flour and meat he wanted. Carrying 2 bags of ingredients, Xian ran for a while and got tired. It was still a small uphill road. No, I have to go find my sister. Xian raised the bag of meat in his hand. It was unknown whether he was stretching his sore muscles or measuring how far he was from home. Run! Xian, who didn't perform well just now, seemed to have turned into a piglet chasing the wind. His short legs ran very fast. Xian. In the wind, there was the cry of a nightingale in the forest. It was a familiar call. It was a call that Xian dreamed of. What's going on? Xian was running with his head down when he suddenly raised his head in surprise. He saw his sister Chi-Chi standing at the top of the hill where the setting sun was the most beautiful. Xian. It really wasn't a dream. Kiki was waving her arms and calling him with a smile. Oh! The audience felt as if the softest part of their hearts had been hit, especially the female audience. They looked at this scene with tears in their eyes and held their chests. Is this a fairy tale? Sister Kiki. Sister Kiki. Xian's feelings at that moment could not be described with words. His eyes, the shape of his mouth, and the way his body trembled, all reflected the overwhelming joy. Little brother Xian, hee. Kiki hugged Xian happily. I forgot about you. At that moment, Xian only had a silly smile on his face. He was so happy that he didn't even look at his father who was walking over with poplar fruit. What was going on here? The camera still had to go back to nearly half an hour ago. At that time, poplar fruit was pacing back and forth in front of his house. From time to time, he would smile at the staff beside him and say, "Am I too anxious?" Yes, he was too anxious, and he had already become like this an hour ago. Although at that time, his daughter had only been doing a mission with her friends for less than half an hour, poplar fruit felt like a whole day had passed. Every father was the same. After chatting for a while, they were not in the mood to sit with each other. They all said that they wanted to go home and wait for their son or daughter. I'm worried that she will be anxious if she doesn't see me when she comes back. After waiting anxiously for a long time, poplar fruit was restless. The cameraman next to him wanted to beat him up. My daughter hasn't come back yet. Poplar fruit scratched his head and smiled at the cameraman. He didn't know that the cameraman was so dizzy that he didn't want to chat with him. I don't know what happened. It would be great if I could secretly follow behind like in the first season. Anxiously waiting. Standing at the top of the hill, poplar fruit looked at the mountain road leading to his house. This was not the first time poplar fruit felt this way. The last time was when Kiki had just started kindergarten. I'm back. I'm back. Poplar fruit suddenly shouted happily. He hurriedly ran down the hill. He was so fast that the cameraman didn't pay attention and couldn't keep up with poplar fruit. Fortunately, there was a cameraman behind Kiki. He looked at the mountain and saw a tall figure in the distance, as if being blown down by the mountain wind. It was almost in front of him. I got them all. Kiki took 2 family portions of food by herself. It was very difficult for her to carry the basket, but she couldn't help but happily convey the news to her father. You got all of them. Great, Kiki, you're great. Dad is proud of you. Poplar fruit ran to his daughter happily. He quickly took the basket in his daughter's hand and asked, Is it heavy? It's not heavy. Papa, am I great? Kiki could finally take a breath. She immediately pouted and stretched out a pair of small hands to her father, wanting him to praise her. That's great. I didn't know you could bring back such a heavy basket. Poplar fruit smiled. He hugged his daughter with his right arm and kissed her on the forehead. Kiki giggled. She happily hugged her father and kissed him. It hadn't been 2 hours, but the father and daughter missed each other so much. Where are your brothers? Poplar fruit carried his daughter with one hand and the basket with the other and walked home. They got it too. Kiki said casually. She got down from her father and stood behind him, watching him pick out the ingredients from the basket. Wow, there are so many vegetables. Poplar fruit praised, Dad can make enough for 5 of us. Hee. Kiki especially enjoyed her father's praise. Flour, eggs, pork, and onions. Poplar fruit's voice was full of doubts. Hey, that's not right. Yonghua turned her head and asked Chi-Chi, why do we have 2 portions of meat and 1 portion of green onion? Onions. Onions. Kiki didn't react to her father's question. Did brother Xian not bring back the onions and meat? Poplar Fruit guessed. Only Xian needs these 2 things. Oh, right. Kiki blinked her big eyes and looked at her father with some panic. It seems like brother Xian didn't take his things. Then what should we do? Poplar Fruit asked his daughter for an idea. Then what should we do? Kiki didn't know what to do. She stood there helplessly. Brother Xian also went home. But his things are still here. Should we send them back to him? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. It's okay to do something wrong. You have to be brave enough to accept it and have the courage to correct it. Yes. Kiki pouted and nodded. She took her father's hand and shook it, but, Papa, I don't want to leave you. Let's go together, okay? Okay. Papa will go with you to find brother Xian and return the ingredients to him. Then, we'll come back early to cook. Originally, he wanted his daughter to return the ingredients herself, but changed his mind. Poplar Fruit didn't want to anxiously wait for his daughter to come back. Poplar Fruit held Kiki's hand, and each of them held a portion of ingredients. They went back the way they came and met Zhou Shimin at the fork in the road, who had let his son continue to do the task. He's at the foot of the hill in front. You just went there. Kiki, go find brother Xian and apologize to him. Poplar Fruit smiled and patted his daughter's shoulder. Brother Xian. Kiki ran over, and that was how Xuan's dream came true. He must be overjoyed. Zhou Shimin smiled and shook his head at Poplar Fruit. He pointed at his son who was hugging Kiki tightly and sighed, this guy will definitely abandon his father when he has a girlfriend in the future. He didn't notice that Poplar Fruit's eyelids twitched. His smile froze when he saw his daughter being hugged by Xian. I just asked Kiki to bring back the ingredients and take care of you. When did I allow you to hug your sister? Poplar Fruit shouted angrily in his heart. Chapter 1176. How to make noodles. In Poplar Fruit's impression, it was either bought or taken out from a machine. Living in Guangdong province for almost 30 years, Poplar Fruit really has not made noodles. Not to mention him, even his mother has not made noodles. Ha. Poplar Fruit looked at the explanation on the task card manual with a silly smile. Knead the dough, beat the dough, then roll the dough, cut the dough. It was easy to say, but there was no clue at all. Yes, Poplar Fruit has seen people make noodles on TV, but watching and making noodles himself are 2 different things. Maybe if Poplar Fruit was given a week to explore and ask for advice, then he might also become a noodle chef. But today, making noodles for the first time, Poplar Fruit had a faint feeling in his heart that it was going to be bad. Papa, I'll help you cook. Kiki came in swinging her small hands. Just now Poplar Fruit asked her to wash her hands. Okay. But we have to make noodles first. Do you want to knead the dough with Papa? Poplar Fruit asked his daughter. Yes. Kiki looked excited. Achoo! Unexpectedly, the little girl sneezed first. Yes, the temperature at night in this village is still very low, and the mountain wind is blowing. If you don't pay attention, it will be troublesome if you catch a cold. Poplar Fruit has been used to the heat island effect in the city these years, and forgot about this. Come on, quickly put on the coat. Poplar Fruit did not care about the noodles. He put it aside first, took out a pink zippered sweater with a big ear hat, and put it on Kiki. You have to wear a hat. Kiki was wrapped in the sweater, and her voice was muffled, she said with a smile. When she put on the hat and zipped it up, Chi-Chi would become a cute pink bunny. This was also the reason why Chi-Chi liked this dress. How are you going to help Daddy if you wear a hat? Poplar Fruit smiled gently. Then I won't wear it. Later, I'll wear it to scare Brother Xian, Brother Dajuan, and Brother Nui. Kiki asked her father to roll up her sleeves. And Brother Kong. Poplar Fruit reminded, in order to let everyone eat lollipops, he worked very hard to play games. Have you forgotten? I didn't forget. There's still Brother Kong. Kiki nodded. Alright, back to business, kneading the dough. Poplar Fruit first poured the flour that Kiki asked for on a large chopping board, piling it up into a small mountain. Then, Poplar Fruit escaped a hole in the middle, turning it into a small volcano. Kiki stood on a chair with a basin full of water in her hand. She asked, "Can I pour the water now?" Wait, Daddy knocked an egg in. It just so happened that Kiki asked for an egg back. Knocking it in might make the noodles more delicious. Otherwise, why would there be egg noodles? However, Poplar Fruit was wrong. The egg here was actually a duck egg, and it was only the yolk. He knocked the whole egg in. Would it be the first step of the dark cuisine? How much do you want to add? Kiki held the basin and looked at her father in confusion. How much? You add first. Daddy will watch, and I'll tell you when it's enough. Poplar Fruit himself didn't know, but he thought that it shouldn't need too much water, so he asked Kiki to pour about a cup of water. I want to play too. Chi-Chi curiously looked at her father's hand kneading the large ball of flour. After she put down the basin, she eagerly said, "Let's try." Then you stand in front of Daddy. Poplar Fruit stepped aside and then pulled over a small stool for Kiki to stand on. This made it easier for Kiki. Press the flour and knead it in the middle. Poplar Fruit said. After Kiki came up, she only dared to touch it gently and touched a little flour. It's disgusting. This time, Chi-Chi rubbed her fingers together, but they immediately became sticky when they came into contact with water. You don't like it? If you don't like Kiki, wash your hands and wait for Daddy to do it, okay? Poplar Fruit asked. No, I want to help Papa. Kiki shook her head and continued to knead. She leaned on her father's warm chest and giggled. It's like playing with mud. Poplar Fruit smiled. From time to time, he would squeeze the outer layer of dough inwards. Sometimes, he would even cover the back of the little fellow's palm, making the little fellow laugh non-stop. However, Poplar Fruit and Kiki played with the dough like this. Without using any strength, it seemed that there was no way to make the dough live in a short period of time. Fortunately, after playing for a while, Kiki also became a little disinterested. Poplar Fruit let her go to the side to play first, and he worked hard to knead it. Papa, look at me. Poplar Fruit turned his head and looked at the little fellow who called him, only to find that Kiki had unknowingly put a little flour on her nose. Maybe it was intentional. Wow, Kiki, are you going to play a double act for Daddy? Poplar Fruit and Kiki both laughed. It was not easy to make the dough, but Poplar Fruit felt that the dough he made was a little different from the dough he saw on TV. His dough seemed to be a little dry, and the flour would fall off if he touched it. In any case, Poplar Fruit first tried to roll the dough. He took the rolling pin and pressed hard on the dough. As a result, the dough broke into two pieces like the stones on the Lost Plateau. What the hell? Poplar Fruit felt that something was wrong. It seemed that he added too little water. Then add more water. Poplar Fruit called Kiki, who was playing with the camera on the side, to help add water. Is it enough? Kiki asked. A little more. Poplar Fruit was not confident. But this time, Poplar Fruit added too much water. When he kneaded the dough again, it could no longer condense. No, it was not that it could not condense. If poplar fruit continued kneading the dough for more than an hour, he might still be able to make a qualified dough. But if he waited for another hour, it would be too late. Poplar fruit had spent nearly 40 minutes kneading the dough. There was still half an hour before they had to gather at the village chief's place. They could not make it in time. Kiki, let's not eat noodles today. Daddy is sorry for not making the noodles well. Poplar fruit sighed and said to his daughter. It's okay. Kiki jumped around her father, full of energy. She said with a smile, anyway, as long as Daddy can make delicious food for Kiki to eat, it's okay. Poplar fruit laughed and said, of course, except for the noodles, Daddy can definitely make other things well. Poplar fruit threw the wet noodles aside, and then began to process the other ingredients that Kiki brought back. Dong dong dong, dong dong dong. Under the camera, Poplar fruit seemed to have completed a super transformation, as if he had suddenly turned from a little apprentice into a super chef. His knife skills were steady and skillful. He washed and cut quickly. When he was about to stir-fry the ingredients, Poplar fruit hesitated. He was good at cooking southern dishes, but this might also spoil the atmosphere of the competition. Everyone was cooking Western and Shaanxi dishes. Why should he make a Cantonese dish to show off? Chapter 1177. No, we have to be creative. Poplar fruit looked at the shapeless dough next to him and thought, yes, we have to make use of this dough, even if we don't make noodles. What about the dough that can't be used to make noodles? A scene in the first movie, Where Are You Going, Father G, inspired Poplar fruit to make dough soup. However, Poplar fruit decided to be more creative. He began to boil a pot of water. At the same time, Poplar fruit cut the meat into smaller pieces and chopped the vegetables. Before the water boiled, Poplar fruit first mixed the meat and vegetables, and then stewed them for a while with water and sauce. When the water boiled, he took it out of the pot. This was Poplar fruit's version of Tang-er's braised pork. He didn't have enough ingredients and experience, but after Poplar fruit's superb cooking skills, when the braised pork was scooped into a clean basin by Poplar fruit, the aroma immediately overflowed, attracting Kiki, who was playing by herself, to come over to see what was going on. Papa, it smells so good, so good. Kiki happily waved her hands and said. Is it? Wait a minute, Papa will make a small bowl for you to taste and see if it's really delicious. Poplar fruit began to quickly throw dough into the hot pot. Poplar fruit wanted to use the method of making braised noodles to make dough balls, so the dough balls couldn't be cooked in the hot pot for too long, or the texture wouldn't be smooth. After throwing a few dough balls and waiting for about 10 seconds, Poplar fruit picked up the dough balls with a spatula. He made a small bowl for Kiki and poured hot gravy on it. Kiki took her small spoon and began to eat. Slow down, try it first and see if it's still hot, Poplar fruit said. How is it? How does it taste? Delicious. Kiki gave her father the first like. Poplar fruit immediately grinned and asked, which is better, the gravy and meat, or the dough? The gravy and meat are delicious. Kiki said honestly. The dough is a little sticky. That was probably because it wasn't mature enough. Poplar fruit tasted one of the dough balls in Kiki's bowl. That's easy. I just need to cook it for a few more seconds and it won't stick to my teeth. Poplar fruit was quite good at controlling firepower. Poplar fruit picked up the scoop and threw the dough balls into it. His technique surprised the audience. He was like a hidden weapon master in a martial arts movie. Poplar fruit threw the dough balls accurately and evenly on the scoop. This was based on the premise that he was very fast. Poplar fruit must have practiced it before. An audience member who didn't know much about Poplar fruit sighed. Nonsense, of course he practiced it before. Otherwise, How could he have taken care of 8 terrorist thugs by himself? Her best friend looked at her with disdain. In this way, not only would the dough balls not stick together, but they could also be cooked more evenly in the boiling water. Poplar Fruit did this a few times and finally finished cooking all the dough balls. In order to prevent the dough balls from sticking together due to gravity, he even took the trouble to prepare several large bowls to separate them. About 1 large bowl of dough balls was enough for a family. Poplar Fruit, are you done here? Lu Yi brought his basket of steamed buns to Poplar Fruit's house. The moment he entered the house, Lu Yi and Kiki happily played together. Lu Yi looked at Poplar Fruit's work and exclaimed, "What a sumptuous meal." "Sumptuous my ass. Just the gravy and a few bowls of dough balls. If this was to entertain guests, wouldn't it be too shabby?" However, looking at Lu Yi's steamed buns, Poplar Fruit smiled. It could indeed be called sumptuous. Why did you change your clothes? Nuo-yi pulled Kiki's hand and the two of them happily chatted. Yeah, my daddy said that it's very cold at night. You're also wearing a jacket. Kiki giggled and said. Poplar Fruit turned around and looked at the hands of the two innocents holding each other. His eyelids twitched and he secretly rejoiced in his heart. Luckily, I've already hidden the bell. Let me show you something fun. Kiki's face tensed up and then began to pull up the zipper of her sweater. However, when she pulled it up to her chin, she couldn't do anything. Daddy, quickly come and help me. Kiki said in a muffled voice. Yonghua tucked her daughter's hair in and said with a smile, Didn't you say you were going to show it to everyone when we gather? I'll show it to Brother Nuo-yi first. I can't wait that long. Kiki giggled. After a while, her voice was wrapped up because Poplar Fruit had already pulled the zipper to the top. Kiki's head was already curled up in the sweater. Nuo-yi, what do you think I look like? Kiki pushed her long ears forward and then stretched out her index and middle fingers and hooked them. Her voice was getting cuter and cuter. I know this. You look like a rabbit. Nuo-yi exclaimed and laughed loudly. He jumped on the ground as if it was really interesting. Poplar Fruit quickly released his daughter. She took a breath of fresh air and laughed happily. That's right, rabbit. Brother Nuo-yi, don't you think my clothes are very fun? Uncle Poplar Fruit, let's go to the village head's house quickly. After a while, Nuo-yi also walked to Poplar Fruit's side and looked at him. Okay. Just wait for a while. Poplar Fruit couldn't find anything else. He used the basket that Kiki had just brought home and laid a wooden board. Then, he put the covered marinade and a few bowls of dough balls in it. Let's go, Daddy, hurry up. Kiki and Nuo-yi walked in front. They talked about some childish topics. Kiki also turned back to call her father from time to time. Aren't you going to hold hands with Daddy? Poplar Fruit called out. He found that his tone was a bit like Zhou Shimin's. Seeing his daughter and son being taken away by children of the same age, his heart felt empty and uncomfortable. But he was still the one at a disadvantage. Because he had a daughter at home. Luckily, in Kiki's heart, her father was more important. She pulled Nuo-yi back to her father's side. Her right hand held onto her father's left hand and said to Nuo-yi, I'll hold Daddy and you. You can hold Daddy and me. Okay, Daddy, I'll hold you. Nuo-yi readily accepted and held on to Lu Ye's hand. Poplar Fruit's face immediately lit up. He felt happy from the bottom of his heart. At the gathering place, everyone had already arrived. Only Poplar Fruit and Lu Yi were left. After all, their houses were the furthest away. But luckily, they weren't too late. Once they arrived, they received a warm welcome. Sister. Did June came to welcome them? But the one who ran the fastest was little Pangxian. He shouted loudly and ran to the entrance of the courtyard with his little tummy shaking. But when he saw Kiki holding on to Nuoyi's hand, he was suddenly stunned. Little Pangxian was the youngest, but he felt that he was more mature. Maybe it was because Zhou Shimin often called him brother at home. Little Pengxuan's mouth slightly pouted and his expression dimmed. It was as if life had suddenly lost its color. Chapter 1178. Poplar Fruit saw Xianxian standing at the door, but at that moment, Kiki was happily chatting with Nuoyi. Kiki didn't notice, so Poplar Fruit let go of his daughter's hand and patted her shoulder. Kiki, look, your brother is here to welcome you. Chi-Chi looked up and waved happily. She said, little brother Xianxian. Elder sister Chi-Chi's clear call was like a ray of sunlight that had broken through the dark clouds and landed on Xianxian's eyes. He immediately became spirited and ran over, shouting happily, elder sister Chi-Chi. Poplar Fruit stepped aside and Kiki took Xianxian's hand. Xianxian, she said happily, aren't my clothes beautiful? Yes, yes. Xianxian nodded vigorously, but his eyes never left Kiki's rosy white face. The program team added a caption at the right time. Sister is beautiful, you look beautiful in any clothes. Kiki didn't seem to notice. She continued happily. Wait a minute, I'll show you a magic trick. Yes, yes, yes. It's super fun. I saw it just now. Kiki's zipper is like this. Nuoyi said excitedly. Nuoyi. Kiki pouted unhappily. You can't spoil it. Ha ha. Chubby Xian didn't pay attention to what they were saying. He held Kiki's hand. He was so happy that he couldn't find north. Poplar Fruit and the others entered the courtyard and put down their things. Zhou Shimin sat to the side and sighed. He went to find sister, didn't he? I think as a father, I'll be abandoned by this heartless guy sooner or later. Poplar Fruit chuckled. He was just comforting Zhou Shimin, but in his heart, he was very proud. My daughter is still the best. Even when she has a good friend, she doesn't neglect her father. Papa, come and help me. On the other side, Kiki was making a big fuss in the courtyard. She couldn't wait to show off her bunny coat to her friends. After messing around for a while, it was time to taste the dinner made by the fathers. Let's not talk about the five of us. The quality of the food is very ordinary. After teacher Lin Yongjin finished reading it, he laughed out loud. Other than Lu Ye's steamed buns that still look like steamed buns, everyone's steamed buns deviated from the card's requirements. Actually, Lu Ye's was not a steamed bun. It was called a flour bun. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly. His own was indeed not good-looking. The marinade looked like vegetable soup, and that was because he didn't throw in all the vegetables. The dough was now stuck together and didn't look like anything. Anyway, it was very ugly. Even if it was a chef, it would be very difficult to make such simple ingredients into a delicacy. Poplar Fruit sighed in his heart. He still hadn't become a true god of cookery. Papa, look at me. Kiki, who was sitting by the side, was playing with a flashlight. The cold light shone on her face, making her look a little weird. Poplar Fruit turned his head and looked at Kiki. They both giggled. Poplar Fruit pinched his daughter's little nose and said, "Look at you. You've become ugly while holding this." "How am I ugly, hee hee?" Kiki squeezed into her father's embrace. As she laughed, she yawned. "Are you sleepy?" Poplar Fruit knew that his daughter was indeed a little tired from playing today. In the evening, she even came back with such a big basket to look for ingredients. No. Kiki, who wanted to continue playing, quickly shook her head. On the other side, the village head asked each child to introduce their father's dishes. The first one was teacher Lin Yongjin's son, Dejun. He actually said very honestly, "My father's dishes are a little bad." No one listened to the rest. Just this first sentence alone made everyone laugh out loud. Poplar Fruit laughed. He felt that teacher Lin's heart was broken. "My papa's dishes are very delicious." Kiki was indeed her father's little cotton-padded jacket. She was very warm. When it was her turn to introduce, she said happily, "My papa said that this dish is called braised dough balls. There are delicious meat and vegetables in this braised dough balls. This dough balls. Kiki didn't know how to introduce the dough balls. In the end, she looked at the bowls and said, "The dough balls are not good looking." That's true. Poplar Fruit hugged his daughter and said with a smile, "The dough balls are indeed not good looking. The first time I made dough, I messed up and the noodles became dough balls." This was just a small interlude. It was time for the babies to try it. "Kiki, come, take this small bowl and try every uncle's dish." Poplar Fruit took his daughter from his side. "Then can I not try Uncle Lin's dishes?" Kiki held her father's hand and asked with a little fear. "Ha! Ha!" Kiki's words were still heard by the fathers. They roared with laughter. Teacher Lin covered his face and shook his head in shame. "It's okay. It won't be bad. Moreover, these dishes are the fruits of each father's hard work, right? You have to respect the fruits of other people's labor. Go, try it. See if it's really not good." Poplar Fruit persuaded the little girl with a smile. The obedient Kiki went, then she turned her head and honestly said to her father, "It's not good." Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He hurriedly comforted teacher Lin, who had been stabbed several times in a row. After tasting the father's dishes, it was time to vote. As expected, Poplar Fruit received the most votes, 4. Lu Yi received his son's vote. Among the father's dishes, Poplar Fruit's and Lu Ye's dishes were indeed the most popular. Of course, the children ate Poplar Fruit's gravy and Lu Ye's steamed buns. The cold dough was not liked by the children, including Kiki. Of course, the program team would not let everyone starve at night. The first half was just a game segment. For the real meal, they even prepared another table of dishes for the fathers and children to eat until they were full. Wow! We even have a prize. After hearing the village chief's final announcement, Poplar Fruit shook Kiki's little arm and laughed exaggeratedly at his daughter. Hee, I like to win prizes." Kiki hugged her father's arm and leaned on him as she laughed. "This huge prize is that in our Lost Plateau where water is scarce, you received a big bucket of water. Next, you can take a bath to your heart's content," the village chief said as he pointed to the bucket beside him. He was lying through his teeth. "It was clearly 2 buckets of water. Let's share it, okay?" Poplar Fruit laughed as he said to the other fathers, "Kiki doesn't need so much water. It's fine. Poplar Fruit, you can keep it. I still have some water at home. You can use it to wash Xuanxuan's hair." Zhou Shimin said. "I don't need it either. It's too late. I'll just go back and wipe it with a towel." Teacher Lin and Hu Jun also expressed that they didn't need it. Lu Yi was very interested as he said, "Then give me a bucket. Isn't the big pot at home still burning? I can add some water to warm it up and let Nuo Yi jump in to take a bath." The unreliable father, Lu Yi, actually came up with an idea that made everyone burst into laughter. Chapter 1179. You carry the load, I'll lead the horse. Nuo Yi walked in front and sang loudly with a broken voice. "No, you're singing wrong. Kiki walked beside her father and looked at him worriedly. She corrected Nuoi, the tune is weird. They were on the way home after dinner. Poplar Fruit was young and strong. He carried 2 buckets of water and went home with Lu Yi and his family. They were all in the same direction. However, the worried teacher Lin Yongjian also followed along and brought Dajuan to Lu Ye's house. Poplar Fruit, let's go to your house first. Lu Yi asked. Your house is closer. It's fine. We'll go to your house first. I'll be back soon with the water. Poplar Fruit laughed. He wanted to take care of Lu Yi and the rest. After all, he was only 27 or 28 years old. Lu Yi was almost 40 and teacher Lin Yongjian was even older. Isn't my daddy very strong? Kiki pulled her father's left hand and said while jumping up and down, my daddy is very strong. My daddy is very strong too. Nuoi said loudly. My daddy is not very strong. Dajuan was always an honest child and did not give his father any face. Regarding this, Lin Yongjian could only helplessly smile bitterly at Lu Yi and the rest. I-oh, my God. When they reached Nuoyi's house, Lin Yongjian's surprised voice could be heard. He stood there in a daze and was stunned. Lu Yi smiled bitterly and let the guests in and said, how is it? Is it a luxurious house? Poplar Fruit put down the water and pulled Kiki's hand to take a look. When he was a long-distance teacher, he had seen all kinds of environments. However, Lu Ye's house was not the worst. It was definitely in the top 10. I don't like living here. Kiki pulled her father's hand and said nervously. She was a girl after all. She liked a clean environment. In the morning, she wanted to challenge the most difficult living environment. However, when she was tired at night, she still wanted to live in a better environment. Dajuan, come and take a look. Lin Yongjian even pulled Dajun over and said, come and take a look. Uncle Lu Yi lives here with Nuyi. It was no wonder that Dajun couldn't accept his father. Even Poplar Fruit didn't dare to compliment Master Lin's way of teaching. Even Kiki looked at Master Lin in fear. Basically, we live in the soil. This is not a cave, this is a cave. Lu Yi said to everyone with a wry smile. This place is called Dark Wind Cave. Nuoi laughed heartlessly. The father and son pair had the spirit of entertaining themselves in a difficult environment. Dad. The kind-hearted Dajun said, can Nuoi sleep at our place? He wanted to invite Nuoi to spend the night at his house. All right. Lin Yongjian's heart ached for Nuoi. He also had such a plan, so he nodded his head in agreement. Kiki's eyes lit up as she tugged at her father's hand. Poplar Fruit squatted down as Kiki pulled on her father's neck and whispered, Daddy, can I also let brother Nuoi sleep at our house? How could she? However, Poplar Fruit was a reasonable father. He shook his head and explained to Kiki, not at night. Tonight, Nuoyi's father also wants Nuoi to stay at home. Isn't this program Where Do Fathers Go? For the first 2 seasons, they want to be with their fathers, right? Chi-Chi looked suspiciously at Lin Dajuan. On the other side, Lin Yongjian had suggested to Nuoi and her father. Nuoi had already happily waved her little hand and agreed. She continued to ask her father, but why can big brother Dajuan do it? If you go to other friends' houses to sleep at night, won't Dad be very worried about you? Won't you be very sad? Poplar Fruit held his daughter's hand and asked. Kiki nodded her head. Then Uncle Lu Yi will also be very sad. Poplar Fruit actually wanted to stop Teacher Lin from separating the father and son, but he was still young and inexperienced. It was not good for him to speak. Besides, the program needed to have a little conflict. He could only persuade his daughter, "It's not easy to come out with Dad to play. You can't let Dad worry and be sad at night, right? Everyone needs to rest. If you sleep well at night, you can come out to play again tomorrow, right?" Kiki nodded her head. She did not make a fuss and went into her father's arms. She relied on her father to hug her. The other side also came to a conclusion. It could not be said that it was a conclusion. Lu Yi could not resist his son's extroversion. He wanted to go to Brother Dajuan's house to sleep. Lu Yi could only look gloomy and sad as Teacher Lin took his son away. There was a scene that made Yongguo's heart ache. Lu Yi was packing Nuo Yi's clothes and belongings. His nagging manner made it clear that he was reluctant to part with Nuo Yi but could not harden his heart to ask him to stay. His feelings were complicated. After sending his son off, Lu Yi stood alone in the room. He was all alone. Poplar Fruit knew how he felt, but he did not intend to comfort him. This was because no one else could comfort him. "Brother Yi, later. When he falls asleep, let's bring him back," Poplar Fruit suggested. But seeing that Lu Yi was still in a daze, he could only say goodnight. He carried his daughter with one hand and carried a bucket of water home with the other. "Do you still want to bathe?" Poplar Fruit asked Kiki. It was already very late. It was past 9. Kiki, who was used to sleeping early, yawned. "I have to bathe. If not, I'll stink." Kiki rolled up her sleeves, revealing her white arms. Then she put them to her father's nose. "Daddy, smell. Where does it stink?" "It smells good. Daddy hasn't eaten his fill yet." "How about Kiki feed Daddy?" Poplar Fruit joked with his daughter. Although he was carrying a bucket of water in his left hand, he was still able to handle it with ease. "Oh no. How can you eat people?" Kiki giggled and rubbed against her father's neck. Back home, Poplar Fruit was boiling water in the courtyard. He boiled half of it and mixed the other half. While he was boiling the water, Poplar Fruit and Kiki sat on the ox cart in the courtyard and looked at the stars together. "Kiki, Daddy used to look at the stars on the ox cart at night when he was young. But the stars at home were not as beautiful as here," Poplar Fruit said. If one were to say that Yangqing only had the darkness of night and artificial neon lights, and a village home had a small galaxy of stars, then the night sky of the Lost Plateau, which was no longer polluted, was surprisingly clean and bright. The stars twinkled, forming a multicolored sea of stars. "I also think it's super beautiful." Kiki's big eyes sparkled. She grabbed her father's hand and said with some longing, "It's a pity that we can't see it at home." "It's okay. If there's a chance in the future, Daddy will still bring you out to play, okay?" Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Ann. Do you want to give Mommy a call? Daddy can ask the uncle in the program crew for a phone." Poplar Fruit played the whole day and also missed Fong Bebe. "Okay." Kiki nodded happily. "I want to tell Mama Ma that the sky here is so beautiful, so beautiful." Chapter 1180. After giving his daughter a bath and reading out the new mission card, Poplar Fruit coaxed his daughter to sleep. Of course, he also stayed in bed with her, even though he was not sleepy. The next day, before dawn, Poplar Fruit got out of bed. Initially, he did not want to get out of bed. It would not be good to stand out from the crowd when filming a show. However, after lying in bed with his eyes open for more than an hour, he still wanted to get out of bed to practice his martial arts. This habit was deeply ingrained in his bones. However, it was not even 4:30 when Poplar Fruit got out of bed. The staff had not woken up yet. Only the camera recorded Poplar Fruit's back view as he got out of bed. There were no cameras in the yard. The staff's car was parked there and the night watch could not help but fall asleep in the car. In order not to disturb them, Poplar Fruit went to the forest outside the door. Worried about his daughter, Poplar Fruit did not go far. He started practicing Taiji fist in the forest. Poplar Fruit did not know that an hour later, Zhou Shimin also got out of bed to practice martial arts on the other side of the village. As expected of the boxing champion, he did not neglect his daily training even when filming a show. But at this time, Poplar Fruit had already returned to the yard, drenched in sweat. Who is it? Although it was not yet 6 o'clock, the staff had already gotten out of bed to wash up and prepare for a new day's filming. They were shocked when they saw Poplar Fruit return. "It's me. It's nothing. You guys go ahead." Poplar Fruit chuckled. Looking at their puzzled expressions, he briefly explained, "I woke up early, so I went to exercise." "How diligent." The staff looked at their watches. It was only a little over 6 o'clock. Poplar Fruit really did not know how to make a show. This kind of scene should have been followed by the cameraman. However, it was too late. Looking at the sweat on Poplar Fruit's body, and calculating the time now, it was impossible for him to take another shot. It was impossible for Poplar Fruit to take a bath. There was too little water here. There was still some water left from yesterday. Poplar Fruit fetched some from the faucet. He simply wiped his sweat and changed into a new set of clothes before coming out. Unfortunately, the staff missed all the scenes of Poplar Fruit in the morning that could have caused the audience to scream. Because of this, the night watch staff were complained about for a long time after they returned. But fortunately, Zhou Shimin on the other side took a lot of shots. Even so, the audience saw a different side of this season. At the very least, there were 2 fathers who did not sleep in, bringing fresh energy to the show. Back in the room, Poplar Fruit looked at the time. He had to go to house 132 in the village for breakfast before 6:30 a.m., so he had to wake his daughter up. "Kiki, little princess, Daddy's little princess." Poplar Fruit pushed his daughter's hair away and called softly with a smile, "It's time to get up." Kiki pouted her small mouth and made a long hum. She even raised her thin and long arms to cover her eyes. "It's too early, I want to sleep." Before it was time for Kiki to get up, her problem of staying in bed began to act up. "What did the task card say yesterday?" "We have to gather for breakfast before 6:30 a.m. If we don't get up earlier, the other children will have finished their breakfast and gone to play." Poplar Fruit kissed his daughter's head and said with a smile, "Little princess, Daddy has already kissed you. Quickly get up." He. Kiki rubbed her sleepy eyes and turned over in bed. Finally, she was not so sleepy anymore. She smiled coquettishly, stretched out her arms and said, "I want Daddy to hug me." "Okay, 1, 2, 3. Poplar Fruit picked up his daughter from the bed and quickly wrapped her in the quilt. It was not because he was afraid of being exposed. Kiki always wore pajamas when she slept at night. It was just that the weather on the plateau was a little cold in the morning. Poplar Fruit did not want his daughter to freeze. After changing clothes and putting on yesterday's coat, Poplar Fruit washed his daughter's face and brushed her teeth, and quickly took his daughter to the gathering place. "Where is the gathering place?" Poplar Fruit looked for it while walking. "Daddy, I want to ride on it." When she woke up in the morning, Kiki's dependence on her father was like a buff. She was not willing to walk and wanted to ride on a big horse. However, Poplar Fruit was also happy to do so. He held his daughter's waist with both hands. "Up!" Kiki giggled, flew up like a cloud, and landed on her father's neck. After finding the place, he was not the first to arrive. Hu Jun and his son were already there. "Good morning, brother Hu." Poplar Fruit smiled and greeted them. He looked at the big yard and said with some surprise, "Wow, is this rice noodles?" Crossing the bridge, rice noodles. We call it noodles here. The host said to Poplar Fruit with a smile. He let Kiki play with Brother Kong Kong. Poplar Fruit came over to watch the hosts make rice noodles with interest. Poplar Fruit was a little upset about yesterday's failure. Watching them make a big ball of noodles and then sift out the rice noodles in a big basin with holes, Poplar Fruit was amazed. He smiled and said to the host, "Uncle, it turns out that rice noodles are so simple." Many thin strands of rice noodles leaked out of the sifting basin and fell into the boiling water. They were cooked clearly. It looked really simple, but Poplar Fruit knew that the real difficulty should be in the mixing of the noodles. Poplar Fruit wanted to try, but Kiki ran over and held her father's hand. She pouted and said, "Daddy, Brother Kong Kong doesn't like to play with me." Looking back, Poplar Fruit saw the cold and aloof President Kong standing in front of the rice noodles hanging to dry. His figure looked very lonely. Poplar Fruit smiled and said to his daughter, "It's not that he doesn't like to play with you, it's just that he's too shy." Originally, Poplar Fruit wanted to think of an idea to let Kong Kong and Kiki play, but at this time, the other three boys appeared in front of them noisily. "Sister, sister." Xian made a shocking appearance. He actually wore a pair of leopard print pants and a golden jacket. He also wore a pair of shiny sunglasses. Immediately, everyone, including the village chief, burst out laughing. Xian, little brother. Brother Nui, Brother Dajuan. Kiki happily ran over to greet them. She also welcomed the other two brothers. Compared to the cold and aloof President Kong, the other brothers were much more amiable. "Brother Yi, what happened last night?" Poplar Fruit smiled and greeted the fathers one by one. He also asked about Lu Yi, who had his heart broken yesterday. Lu Yi smiled and said, "Your suggestion last night was still the best." After that, didn't a mission card come? I took the mission card and brought him back. Then did he sleep well in the dark wind cave last night? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. It was all right. It wasn't as bad as I thought. Lu Yi smiled and said, "Moreover, with the blanket and the lights off, it didn't feel like living in a cave." He slept in the morning and didn't want to get up. Chapter 1181. It was not easy to eat a delicious breakfast. There was still a small task, which was to do the splits. Soup, rice noodles, and minced meat. The elements of the three types of minced meat rice noodles needed to be obtained through the splits, and each one was further than the other. "Daddy, I really want to eat. That minced meat is even better than the one you made yesterday," Kiki said. "Wasn't that right?" The red and green radishes and cucumbers filled one's appetite just by looking at their appearance. Xian, looks like we can only drink soup." This won't do, my legs aren't long enough." The shortest of the five fathers, Zhou Shimin said with a smile. However, Lu Yi was eager to try. After all, he really had a pair of long legs. Although there was a distance between him and Poplar Fruit, his height was about the same as Poplar Fruit's. Poplar Fruit also wanted to win a sumptuous breakfast for his daughter. He put down Kiki, who was pestering him, and said, "Kiki, go play with your brothers. Didn't you want to play with Brother Nui yesterday?" "But I want to watch Daddy compete." Kiki pouted and said. "All right, then you watch. Daddy will show you later," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Lu Ye's legs were long, but in terms of flexibility, he could not compare to Zhou Shimin. After completing the second rice noodles task, he could not reach the minced meat anymore. For this reason, the village chief specially lowered the difficulty for Lu Yi, allowing him to finish the whole set of breakfast. Hu Jun was the second to come. Hu Jun was also tall and strong. With a step, he finished the first two tasks. However, the third task was a little more difficult. He used both hands to support himself on the ground and used all his strength to break his legs. He kicked, but he felt that something was pulled at his crotch. He clamped his hands with his legs and jumped on the side for a while. Lu Yi did not forget to add salt to the wound. He laughed and said loudly, "That last kick, he must have fallen." Hearing Uncle Hu scream, Kiki ran over in fear. She pulled her father's hand and said, "Daddy, Daddy, why don't we just drink the soup?" It's okay, it's okay. Your father's body is flexible." Poplar Fruit comforted his daughter with a smile. However, it wasn't Poplar Fruit's turn yet. He was at the end of the line. Seeing that it wasn't her father's competition, Kiki felt at ease and went to sit by the side to watch. The little girl looked refreshed today and even wore a beautiful butterfly hairband. On the other hand, Xian was pestering Kong Kong. He was the only one who could endure Kong Kang's cold personality and relentlessly chase after him, wanting him to play with him. However, Nuo Yi was a little face-blind today. He called Kong Kong, who had the same hairstyle as Dejun, Big Brother Dejun. Big Brother Dajun kept calling her Big Brother Dajun, but Kong Kong had no intention of defending herself. Kong Kong did not know that Nuo Yi had already made a mistake in the morning. He had called Dajun as Brother Kong Kong, and now he had made another mistake. Kong Kong didn't explain, but Kiki, who was watching the fathers compete, inadvertently looked up and was confused. Big Brother Dajun. Kiki was confused. If the one in front of her was Big Brother Dajun, then the one she wanted to play with just now, was it Big Brother Kong Kong or Big Brother Dajun? Luckily, Lu Yi and Hu Jun took some time to comfort Kong Kong, who was annoyed by Nuo Yi's pestering. They also corrected Nuo Yi's mistake. At this moment, Kiki let out a sigh of relief. She didn't recognize the wrong person. What was the real Dajun doing? He left his father, who was struggling to get soup for him, and kept walking in circles in the yard, muttering, "Let's go kill a sheep, okay?" Kiki, who was full of righteousness, jumped up and ran over. She pouted and asked, "Big Brother Dajun, why do you want to kill a sheep? A sheep is so cute. Let's not kill it, okay?" To Kiki, who never ate mutton and liked to look at pleasant sheep, anyone who wanted to kill a sheep was a bad person. They were all bad wolves. However, Dajun didn't pay attention to what she said. His attention was attracted by his father's screams. He casually said, "Okay," and ran over to join in. Actually, this split task had already become a game for the fathers to play. What serious splits? Ever since Lu Yi started, there had been no such thing. Everyone was very helpful. While they were yelling about being split, there were also some with evil smiles on their faces as they held onto each other's bodies and pulled on each other's ankles, forcefully pulling them apart and straightening them so that they could complete the task. Son. Teacher Lin Yongjian was the most miserable. He cried out, "This is killing your father." However, in such a playful manner, the fathers, who were still a little distant from each other yesterday, became much closer today. Even Zhou Shimin, who was quite flexible but had short legs, was crying out after being broken by Lu Yi. At this time, Xian didn't appear by his father's side. He stood there, playing with Dajun for a while, then running over to Big Sister Kiki's side. "Big Sister Kiki, Big Sister Kiki. Let's play together." Xian wanted to pull Kiki's hand. However, he didn't realize that Kiki's mood wasn't that high at the moment. Because these fathers were crying out, Kiki's heart was filled with worry for her father. How could she be in the mood to play with the other children? "I don't want to play." She shook her head and pulled her hand out. She walked around Xian, who was blocking in front of her, and continued to look at the field. Xian, who was rejected, turned around and ran away dejectedly. When it was her father's turn, Kiki ran over and pulled her father's hand. She looked worried and asked, "Daddy, are you okay?" It was hard to give up on one's natural beauty. Even if the little girl was worried, she still gave off a pitiful feeling like Lin Dayu. "Kiki, don't worry. If your father can't do it, we'll make sure he can." Zhou Shimin and Lu Yi began to laugh at Poplar Fruit with bad intentions. "I can do it, I can do it. Brothers, please show mercy." Poplar Fruit quickly cupped his hands and did a split for them to see. The first bottle was easily kicked over by him. From the looks of it, Poplar Fruit's flexibility was even better than Zhou Shimin's. The last bottle probably wouldn't be a threat to him. "This won't do. Just now, my legs were short, so I put it closer." "Poplar Fruit, your legs are so long, you have to put it further away." Zhou Shimin quickly went up to interfere. The fathers all laughed evilly. How could it be that simple? Just now, Poplar Fruit was holding their waists. It could be said that he was one of the accomplices. Zhou Shimin put the last two bottles far away. It seemed that it was not easy to split the last bottle in half by Poplar Fruit. "Don't bully my daddy." After the fathers pulled the second bottle of Poplar Fruit, Kiki couldn't stand it anymore. With tears in her eyes, she stretched out her hands to protect Poplar Fruit and said, "It's very painful." The little girl was as beautiful and cute as a lotus flower in the early morning. Now, her eyes were red because of her father. She looked very pitiful. Chapter 1182. Kiki, it's fine. Daddy is fine. Poplar Fruit quickly asked for some tissues from the staff. As he comforted his daughter, he smiled and said, "We were just fooling around. Also, can't you see that Daddy is completely fine?" Little fatty Xian, who had just run away with a face full of dejection, ran back. He stood beside Chi-Chi's sister and said loudly, "Sister, don't be afraid. That, your daddy will definitely be able to do it." "Hey, when Daddy was doing the mission, why didn't I see you comforting Daddy?" Zhou Shimin said with a smile. "Yeah, Daddy will definitely be able to overcome this small difficulty. You have to give Daddy confidence, right?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said to his daughter, "Kiki, can you and little brother Xian stand here and watch Daddy compete?" Kiki sniffed and nodded. Xian finally got his wish and held on to Kiki's sister's hand. After comforting Kiki, the few fathers smiled and asked, "Poplar Fruit, are you still coming?" "I'm coming. Teacher Lin is already going all out, so I naturally can't be at a disadvantage." Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Ah." Yang Gui used all his strength to do a split, and it almost became a single leg. The few fathers were either supporting him or pulling him, worried that they would break him. "It's fine. I'm fine. Brother Zhou, pull me forward a little more." Poplar Fruit shouted. Zhou Shimin had placed the bottle a little too far away, but now that the arrow was on the bow, he had no choice but to release it. Zhou Shimin shouted, "Just bear with it a little. It'll be fine." He pressed down on Poplar Fruit's foot and actually pressed down on Poplar Fruit's leg, causing it to increase another distance. Then, he and Lu Yi pulled Poplar Fruit's leg forward to touch it. The bottle finally fell. "Oh! Success!" Everyone cheered. "How do you feel?" After Poplar Fruit stood up, everyone asked with a smile. Of course it was painful. Yang Gui's split just now was almost a 190-degree split. He twisted his legs and stood up, laughing with everyone. "It's very comfortable. Very comfortable. Papa! Papa! Kiki was beaming with joy. She jumped around her father, trying to attract his attention. Poplar Fruit picked up his daughter and asked with a smile, "What do you think? Am I awesome?" "Papa is awesome." Kiki giggled as she hugged her father's neck and praised him. He could finally have breakfast. This breakfast was not easy to come by. Both the adults and the children ate with great relish. After breakfast, the table was cleared and everyone gathered in a circle to listen to the village chief's chatter. "Let me ask everyone, are you happy in your daily life?" Village chief asked. "Happiness." Kiki raised her little hands high and hugged her father's neck. Growing up with her father was an unparalleled happiness. Super happy. Little chubby Xian followed closely behind Kiki and replied. Looking at the cute smile on his little chubby face, one could tell that he was very happy. But our children in the past did not have such a happy life. Village chief said, at that time, there were many bad guys. There was also a monster. Nuai opened the children's imagination. There was also ketchup bad guy. Dejun said. What was that? Little chubby Xian first looked at brother Nuai and then looked at brother Dejun. His frightened expression was so funny. There was also Grey Wolf. Kiki struggled out of her father's embrace and could not help but participate in this brainstorm. Sister participated. Little chubby Xian's eyes lit up and he said loudly, there were also zombies. This topic had already been dragged to God knows where by the children. The village chief did not know whether to laugh or cry. After waiting for the children's brainstorm to stop, he continued, all right, what do we need to do? Uncle Village Chief is going to tell everyone. It turned out that today's big mission was to prepare a grand wedding for the veteran couple who had participated in the anti-Japanese war. Hearing the village chief say such an important thing, the children all listened attentively, especially Kong Kong. His little face was tense and he was especially focused. All right, the village chief began to announce each father and son's mission. Today, we have to invite Lin Yongjian and Dejun, as well as Poplar Fruit and Princess Kiki. Chi-Chi tightened her grip on her father's hand as her ears perked up. The village chief said, your mission is to go to the village and find some extras. Then you can film a drama about fighting the Japanese together. Is that okay? All right. Lin Yongjian was the first to laugh. Poplar Fruit also laughed. Oh, this is really simple. Teacher Lin is the best at anti-Japanese war dramas. However, was it really as simple as what Poplar Fruit and Lin Yongjian thought? How could it be? One must know that the extras were not adults who could be called upon and brought along. They were children around the same age as Kiki and Dejun. They did not care, nor did they care about the other fathers. After distributing the missions, Poplar Fruit and Lin Yongjian took the prop knives and prepared to leave with Kiki and Dejun to find the extras. Poplar Fruit, we have to think of a script first and then choose the actors according to the script. Lin Yongjian suggested as they walked. Poplar Fruit nodded and said, yes, let's do as you say, Teacher Lin. To listen to the guidance of a professional, Poplar Fruit readily agreed. Then bring the children to my house first. My mansion is more spacious and brighter. Lin Yongjian said. Papa, Papa. I want to go too. Brother Dejun said that he has sheep. Kiki heard and happily shook her father's hand. Dejun, who had promised Kiki that he would not kill the sheep, was quite hospitable. Just now, he had been telling Kiki about his family. All right, all right. Poplar Fruit smiled and nodded. That's great. Kiki can come to my house to play. Dejun happily jumped up and put the prop knife that he had been playing with in his hand into his father's other hand. His other hand was holding Kiki's hand and said cheerfully, "Kiki, we are good friends." "Yes." Kiki also happily replied. When they arrived at Dejun's yard, Kiki and Dejun ran to the sheep pen. Poplar Fruit was worried and wanted to follow them. After all, it was a sheep with horns on its head. It was not the little lamb from yesterday. Poplar Fruit was worried that his daughter would get hurt. "No, no, Poplar Fruit, you have to come and discuss with me." Lin Yongjian quickly came over and pulled Poplar Fruit and said, "Let the children play by themselves. It's okay. There are staff members helping to take care of it. Are you still worried about any problems?" Lin Yongjian smiled and said, "We are in the yard. We can see it. Don't be afraid." "All right." Poplar Fruit looked at Kiki, who was looking at the little lamb, and then looked at the female assistant who was standing a few steps away to protect her. Only then did he calm down and go to the yard to discuss the script with Teacher Lin. Chapter 1183. I like goats. They're super cute. This was Kiki's voice. I also like goats. Dejun swallowed the words, "I prefer to eat mutton," because before this, Kiki had righteously criticized his violent and evil idea of killing goats. The camera panned over. The two children were now standing next to the sheep pen, happily feeding the goats with the fodder that the owner had sent over. "Big brother Dejun, look, it's eating my food." Kiki's expression was focused, seeing that under the call of the fodder, the goats that were far away just now all gathered over. Her mood suddenly became excited. "That's not your food, it's grass, goats eat grass." Dejun laughed, correcting her without raising his head. "Kid, don't you know that if you always correct a girl's mistakes, you won't be able to find a girlfriend in the future?" The audience felt anxious for Dejun's head that was like a boiled egg that had been peeled off the shell. Fortunately, Kiki didn't care about this right now. Her attention was currently attracted by these cute goats. Baw. Baw. Kiki imitated a goat's bleat. The bleat was actually quite similar, making the goats that were engrossed in eating grass couldn't help but raise their heads to look at this same kind that was wearing a pink coat, a lace skirt, and long stockings. The audience just liked this little girl more and more, but Poplar Fruit later watched the live broadcast of this program with Fong Beibei at home, and couldn't help but laugh. His daughter's talent for language seemed to be better than his. It had already broken through the boundaries of race. "I can bleat too." Dejun didn't show any weakness, but when he opened his mouth, a hoarse bleat came out, scaring the goat that was carefully eating grass in front of him to jump back, and didn't dare to come up again in a panic. "You scared it." Kiki said cheerfully, little goat, don't be afraid. That's a big goat, it has a beard." Dejun continued to correct, being a heartless and upright boy without a girlfriend. Kiki suddenly remembered the joke she told her father yesterday. She giggled and said, No, De Yang is my papa. Little Yang is me." "What?" Dejun wasn't as quick-witted as Poplar Fruit. He was confused by Kiki's words. Chi-Chi laughed happily for a while before she finally told Dejun the reason behind this. "You and your father are both surnamed Yang, so are you Kiki Yang?" Dajun asked. "My surname is Lin, and my full name is Lin Dajun." "No, my full name is Yang Luochi. My dad said that the two words Luochi mean gemstone, and it's also a homonym in English. Last angel. Daddy said that I was an angel that fell from the sky. Because he couldn't find the way back to heaven, he stayed in the human world." Kiki explained. This was the first time Kiki's real name had been explained in front of the public. The production crew cooperated and gave her a full shot without any editing. "How beautiful." It turns out that Kiki's name is so beautiful and meaningful. Some viewers sighed with emotion on Weibo. However, there were more viewers who had followed Poplar Fruit's Weibo for a year, 2 years, or even many years. When they heard Kiki's explanation, their eyes were wet. Only those who knew Poplar Fruit's story in the early years could feel Poplar Fruit's love for Kiki. Kiki's unexpected birth messed up Poplar Fruit's life, but Poplar Fruit still loved his daughter deeply. From Kiki's name, one could see Poplar Fruit's sincere feelings when Kiki was born. Maybe you are a little angel that fell from the sky, lost your way, and can only stay in the human world. However, please don't be afraid. Daddy will always protect you, care for you, and let you grow up happily in the human world. Even if you can't go back to heaven, you can be a little princess happily in the human world. Daddy's little princess. Some fans passionately interpreted the meaning of Kiki's name. This Weibo post received tens of thousands of reposts and touched countless people. Back on the show, Dejun nodded after listening and praised from the bottom of his heart, "Your name is really nice." Thus, they forgot about the topic of Big Yang and Little Yang. This is the pleasant goat, this is the lazy goat, this is the old grandfather slow goat. Chi-Chi smiled brightly as she fed the goats while naming them with great interest. However, Dejun didn't really like pleasant goat. He felt that it was a cartoon for children. He had grown up now. Thus, he didn't continue the topic. He walked over and played with the goat that was willing to eat the grass that Kiki fed it. "I touched it." Dejun boldly reached out and touched the bearded goat's ear, scaring the goat and causing it to shrink back. However, he grinned heartlessly. The female assistant that was accompanying them couldn't help but move forward, worried that the goat would hurt the two children. The owner smiled and waved his hand, whispering, "Don't be afraid. These goats are very docile. Don't be so rough. Just like Grey Wolf, slow sheep will be scared." Chi-Chi saw that the sheep had retreated to the back and called out anxiously. In her anxiety, Kiki didn't notice that there was a hint of blame in her tone. Now that Poplar Fruit wasn't here, if Poplar Fruit heard it, he would scold her. "Sorry." After being scolded by Kiki, Dejun lowered his head unhappily. "I won't touch it. It's not that you can't touch it. You have to communicate with it and not scare it. Goats are very timid." Kiki explained. "Big brother Dejun, look, I'll teach you." Kiki's tone was a little beyond her age. Actually, this was because of her father's influence. Poplar Fruit often brought her to teach the poor children. This kind of gentle education was actually more acceptable to the children. Hearing Kiki say this, Dejun's mood turned for the better. He raised his head and regained his smile, seriously looking at Kiki's actions. He saw Kiki holding the grass in her left hand and waving her right hand lightly, calling the goat back. The goat looked at Kiki. Kiki's sincere smile made it lower its guard and stretch out its head to eat the grass. "Slow goat, goat ba ba, let's be friends, okay?" Kiki's voice was very gentle. The goat also baa a few times in response. It agreed. Kiki was overjoyed. The warm morning sun shone on her body. The young lady's eyes were a little hard to open, but she squinted her eyes and smiled brilliantly. Kiki's little hand lightly touched the area between the goat's two horns and its forehead. Then she lightly scratched the soft and long white fur on the goat's cheeks. The goat didn't resist and seemed to be very comfortable. It closed its eyes and even stopped eating the grass. "So awesome." Dejun looked at Kiki in admiration. "Big brother Dejun, you try it too. Slow goat is very good. It will also be willing to be friends with you." Kiki moved to the side and said, "If you treat it gently, it will also be very obedient. Really, it's not afraid of me anymore." After Jun tried it, he turned his head and looked around in surprise. That's right, you are also good friends. Kiki, Kiki. The young lady's bell-like laughter made this morning very happy. Chapter 1184. While the two children were having fun at the sheepfold, Poplar Fruit and Lin Yongjian were worried about the script for the performance that night. The two of them looked at each other awkwardly. One of them looked at the sky while the other looked at the ground, and the other looked at the ground. They sat on the millstone in a daze. It's okay for the adults to act, but what can the children do? Mr. Lin was at his wits' end. He had acted in many dramas, including countless anti-Japanese dramas, but he had never acted in an anti-Japanese drama with children. Poplar Fruit disagreed with Mr. Lin's words. He smiled and said, No, Mr. Lin. We really can't underestimate the children's acting ability. Last time, Kiki's kindergarten filmed a fairy tale drama, Snow White. The children in the class acted very well. Every child was only 3 or 4 years old, Poplar Fruit said. That's because you have a good script, and fairy tale dramas are easier to understand. But what kind of roles should we arrange for them in the anti-Japanese drama? Lin Yongjian frowned. The anti-Japanese drama can also be a little more fairy tale for the children. The children can act as heroes and save China from the invading army. Aren't little soldier Zhang Jie and chicken feather Xian all children? Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Our children are too young. Lin Yongjian waved his hand. He did not believe in the children's acting ability, and did not want to give them a difficult role. Too young. If they can't do it, we can let them act as animals. Poplar Fruit had an idea. He smiled and said, Hey, Mr. Lin, when Kiki was rehearsing the fairy tale drama, the children with good acting skills and courage were cast as the main characters. The children with bad acting skills and poor coordination were cast as the supporting characters or animals. How can such young children have any acting skills? Lin Yongjian still did not believe him. He stood up in annoyance. This segment is really too much. Letting the children act, isn't it like driving pigs up a tree? No, Mr. Lin. You have to believe in the children. When we rehearse, we can teach them well, and they can act. Poplar Fruit advised earnestly. And for the children, it doesn't matter if they can do it or not. Everyone can see that they are involved, which is a kind of progress. When they were rehearsing, their performance was so unrepresentative. When they were on stage, they just stood there and their minds went blank. What should we do? Lin Yongjian was actually kind-hearted and considerate of the child. You might not have experienced Poplar Fruit before, but if you mess up this performance, it will have a huge impact on the child's psychological state. He might not even dare to go on stage in the future. This is like pulling up a seedling to help it grow. That's why actions are more important. It can reduce their dialogue. The main performance should be shown through their actions. Poplar Fruit insisted, even if the children can't say it, they can show it. Why don't we do it this way? We'll use dubbing and they'll just do the actions on stage. Lin Yongjian did not intend to argue with Poplar Fruit on this issue. He said, There's another question. Poplar Fruit, what role should you play? I can play any role, but the main characters are the children. Mr. Lin, the main characters of this program are the children. Poplar Fruit still wanted to change the topic. No, I'm wondering if you want to play the role of a traitor. Lin Yongjian said shockingly. Ah. Poplar Fruit was stunned. He quickly waved his hand and said, Mr. Lin, I can't play the role of a traitor. Just now, Poplar Fruit said that he could play any role. But when the discussion really started, he cowered. Mr. Lin, you want to play the role of a traitor. You're the one who acts well. In front of you, how can I play the role of a traitor? Poplar Fruit laughed. I'm a professional traitor. Everyone knows that I can play the role of a traitor. If I play this role, there's nothing special about it. Lin Yongjian laughed, but if you play it, it's different. It gives people a sense of disparity. The acting requirements of a traitor are too high. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Mr. Lin, why don't I play the role of a devil? It just so happens that I can speak English too. No, you can't play the devil. We can't design such a tall and handsome character for the devil. Lin Yongjian once again rejected Poplar Fruit's idea. Poplar Fruit was speechless. He began to feel that Lin Yongjian was a bit like those movie directors. When it came to acting, many things were decided by one person. It was difficult for his own thoughts to get involved. Of course, Poplar Fruit didn't deny that Lin Yongjian was right. With his image, he really couldn't play the role of a devil soldier. This wasn't Jingwu's sect, the devil in the movie was tall and handsome. Let's not talk about the plot first. It's getting late. Let's quickly get to June and Kiki to find extras. Otherwise, when we're done discussing the script, we'll have to wait for them to find extras. We won't have time to rehearse. Lin Yongjian waved the white paper in his hand and said. Poplar Fruit nodded. He followed Lin Yongjian to the goat pen at the entrance. Kiki and Dejun were playing happily with the goats. Kiki, why are you sitting on the trough? Aren't you afraid of dirtying your little skirt? Poplar Fruit laughed and said, I don't want to hug a dirty little princess. Dejun didn't sit on the trough. Of course, Poplar Fruit still didn't know that Dejun was actually a clean freak. This was only revealed later in the show. It's not dirty. Kiki quickly stood up, turned her head, and patted her butt. She pouted and looked at her father. Only when she saw her father's smiling face did she realize that her father was teasing her. Lin Yongjian walked over and circled around the two children. He smiled and said, Shall I give the two of you a mission? No. Dejun habitually argued with his father. Okay. Kiki happily nodded when she heard the mission. Her voice was full of vitality. Lin Yongjian smiled and asked Kiki, later, what animal do you want to act as? Poplar Fruit's words had some effect. I want to act as a goat. Pleasant goat. Kiki looked up and said to Teacher Lin. Her eyes were filled with longing. Pleasant goat is a guy, right? Lin Yongjian was a little puzzled. Yes, Pleasant goat is a guy. Dejun, do you want to act as Pleasant goat? Pleasant goat can also beat up bad guys. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. No, I don't like to act as a goat. Dejun shook his head. Then I want to act as a dog. Kiki said with her big eyes shining. We have a big dog at home called Goldie. There are many small dogs at home. I want to act as a dog too. Dejun shouted happily. Then I'll act as a horse. Kiki walked around and gave her father grass. She wanted her father to play with the sheep. Kiki will act as a dog. How about you act as a pug? Lin Yongjian smiled. This time, it was really not a prank. Teacher Lin also had a black-bellied side. Kiki did not understand this joke. The little girl kindly thought that Uncle Lin Yongjian was considerate of her feelings. She looked up and waved her hand. She said to Lin Yongjian, It's okay, it's okay. Brother Dejun can act as a dog, and then I can act as a horse. Meh meh. Chapter 1185. Mama, finally, Kiki imitated the tone of a horse and the voice of a sheep. The audience burst into laughter. However, Lin Yongjian was inspired and began to design the characters for the two. Chi-Chi is. Lin Yongjian held a pen in his hand as he spoke while taking notes. Meme horse. Kiki looked at her father and giggled. Then you are. Lin Yongjian pointed at his son and gestured for him to speak. Dejun cooperated and replied, "Woof woof dog." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "It doesn't have to be woof woof dog, it can also be meow meow dog. Then it's a cat." Kiki was amused by her father and giggled non-stop. It was as if the meme she said was not a sheep but a horse. "Alright, now I need you to find some extras." Lin Yongjian said, "We lack a pig now." Teacher Lin had forgotten about the poultry and livestock. There's also a sheep. Poplar Fruit returned to the main topic and did not continue to tease his daughter about the meme horse and wolf dog. There's also a cow and a chicken. Teacher Lin continued the topic. After speaking, Poplar Fruit realized that Dejun and Kiki were a little distracted. Dejun was habitually distracted while Kiki was still intoxicated by the topic just now and had a silly smile on her face. Lin Dejun, repeat what we lack now. What animals are we lacking? Lin Yongjian asked. Cow and pig. Dejun was the first to speak clearly, but his aura immediately plummeted. What else is there? There's also. I forgot. Kiki, think about it. Yanggua's hand shook her absent-minded daughter. Only then did Chi-Chi come back to her senses. She began to recall what Uncle Lin and her father had said just now. However, their voices were a little jumbled, and Chi-Chi's eyes were a little confused. What have you been feeding her for so long? Teacher Lin was impatient. She stood up and waved her hand as she scolded her son. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly. He didn't want to stop him, but Poplar Fruit pointed at the sheep pen to give Kiki a hint. Chicken. Dejun and Kiki actually said in unison that a sheep was a chicken. How could there be such a mistake? The audience couldn't figure it out. Poplar Fruit couldn't figure it out either. However, like the audience, he couldn't help but laugh. No, I was wrong. It's sheep. Kiki blushed and finally reacted. Chickens and sheep, pigs and cows. That's right. Teacher Lin gave one last instruction. Your mission is to find 2 boys and 2 girls. I got it. Dejun waved his hand and pointed at Poplar Fruit and his father. He said, you don't have to follow. I'll go with Kiki. Actually, Poplar Fruit and Lin Yongjian had the same idea. However, that didn't mean that you could righteously request to take away other people's daughters. At that moment, Poplar Fruit's facial expression was colorful. If Dejun was a 15 or 16-year-old child, Poplar Fruit would have found a broom to chase him away. However, Dejun wasn't even 5 yet. Poplar Fruit had nowhere to vent his anger. Looking at the strange smile on Lin Yongjian's face, Poplar Fruit felt like he had swallowed a big fly and wanted to stomp his feet. Also, Kiki, you're a girl. You're a princess. Why are you smiling so shyly? Your face is almost as red as your clothes. You can't do this. Poplar Fruit scratched his head anxiously. Poplar Fruit was about to explode. However, he suppressed his anger and nodded helplessly. He told his daughter, all right, both of you, be careful. Poplar Fruit's inner conflict was completely expressed on his face. It could be said that the audience could see Poplar Fruit's mixed feelings at that moment. Poplar Fruit's depression also brought great joy to the audience. What are you laughing at? She's not your daughter. If Poplar Fruit knew, he would definitely grumble with deep resentment. Poplar Fruit couldn't bear to send his daughter off. Looking at his daughter swinging her pink bunny coat and giggling as she led the way, his glass heart shattered. Of all my precautions, who would have thought that this kid would be the most cunning? The slightly bitter Poplar Fruit had treated the 5-year-old boy as an imaginary enemy. When he started filming, the one he was most wary of was Xian Xian. That child was honest, but had rich emotions. The moment he arrived, he stuck to Kiki. Later on, it was Nuoi. Nuoi was handsome and had a melancholy temperament. He was especially popular with girls since he was young. Kiki had even wanted to invite Nuoi to her house to play yesterday. Poplar Fruit refused to admit that it was to sleep. Hence, Poplar Fruit had raised Nuoi's guard to the highest level, red alert. Who would have thought that Dejun, the shy child from the start, would actually try to kidnap his daughter? Seeing Lin Yongjian wanting to send his son out, but Dejun tugged at his father and said, "Don't go," Poplar Fruit actually had the urge to howl at the sky. Thinking about how he had instructed Kiki to take care of Dejun in the car, worried that he would be too shy to blend in, Poplar Fruit suddenly had the urge to beat himself up. Who asked you to be so nosy? How good would it be if every child was like Kong Kong? Can you stop buzzing around my daughter and harass her all the time? Poplar Fruit looked at his daughter's departing figure with hidden bitterness. That kid had grabbed his daughter's hand again. Actually, Poplar Fruit was overly concerned and thinking too much. It was just a few children. They didn't even know the boundaries between boys and girls. How could anything happen? Children also yearned for beauty. Little chubby Xian was the one who showed it the most. As long as it was food or pretty sisters, there was nothing he didn't like. Kiki was also the representative of beauty among the 5 children. She wasn't just pretty. Being pretty only took up half of the children's perception. They could acutely sense the good and evil in others. Kiki was very kind and had a gentle personality. She also knew a lot, so many children couldn't help but want to get close to her. Even the cold and aloof CEO Kong, if not for his shyness and self-importance, would also want to blend in and play with everyone. Didn't you see him sneaking glances at Kiki sometimes? Dejun's situation was even more complicated. He and Kiki were almost a year apart, but overall, Dejun wasn't much older than Kiki, not to mention his height. Compared to his father's child-rearing style, Dejun felt that Kiki was practically an angel. Not only was she naive and cute, but more importantly, she was gentle and considerate. She wouldn't speak harshly, but would teach him how to communicate with the goat step by step. How could Dejun not want to get close to a girl like this? Even the children had a kind of exclusivity at this moment. Xian Xian would be sad because his sister was playing with other children, but Dejun was worried that his father would interfere and ruin this beautiful moment. Thus, the angel's father misunderstood. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit was also sulking for a while, but later on, he let it go. That's right, what was the point of arguing with a child? Chapter 1186. Poplar Fruit was gloomy for a while, but he sorted out his feelings and threw himself into the tangled discussion with Lin Yongjian. On the other side, Kiki followed Dejun out on a mission. The Vitality girl Kiki didn't like to stay there all the time. Although Yang Yanjiang was cute, she still felt that doing missions was more interesting. The little girl ran in front happily, and Dejun chased after her for a while before catching up. "Kiki, can I hold your hand?" Dejun asked tentatively, confirming that their friend's status was still the same. "Okay." Kiki smiled sweetly. Your hand is hidden in your sleeve. Dejun was overjoyed, and went up to hold Kiki's hand. Kiki was half a head taller than him, but her hands and legs were longer, so Dejun held her hand easily. Then you can put your hand in too. Kiki giggled, finding it fun. The two good friends held hands and went to look for children to act as extras. However, the Lost Plateau was full of yellow sand, and the mountains were undulating. In a village, sometimes two neighboring families would have to walk a few hundred meters. I see it. I see it. Finally, they saw a few villagers in front. Kiki's eyes were sharp, and she immediately saw the children hiding between the adults' legs. Chi-Chi let go of Dejun's hand and happily ran up to him. Dejun was still in a daze and only cared about holding her hand. It was only now that he hurriedly caught up with her. Auntie, hello. The moment she opened her mouth, the little girl was a little shy. She took a step back and went behind Brother Dejun. She put her hand on his shoulder and stuck her head out. Hello. The villager auntie smiled and replied. Dejun's attention wasn't on the mission, but he puffed out his chest and smiled foolishly. He felt proud that Kiki relied on him. Auntie, can we invite the little girl to perform with us? After Kiki said the first sentence, she became bolder. She walked out from behind Brother Dajun and pointed at my daughter, who only reached her chest. Little sister's clothes are very cute. I think she can act as a pig. Kiki said innocently. In the children's worldview, pigs and dogs were all very cute animals. The audience found it funny because they were overthinking things. Yes, I'm a dog, you're a horse, and then she's a pig. Dejun said with a hoarse voice. But the little sister hasn't agreed yet. Kiki waved her hand, not letting Dejun's exaggerated actions scare the little sister. Auntie. Can I? Kiki asked expectantly as she twisted her hands behind her back and gently rubbed her toes on the ground. You have to ask her if you can. The villager's aunt pushed her daughter and said with a smile. These were the requirements of the production team. They had to set up some obstacles for Kiki and the others. Little sister, can you act with your older sister? Kiki put her hands on her knees and lowered her body to ask. Woo woo, woo woo. The little sister turned around and hugged her mother, crying. Chi-Chi immediately felt a little helpless. She stood up and scratched her head in puzzlement. This was the first time she encountered her charm failing. In the courtyard from before, Poplar Fruit happened to be interviewed by the production team. He scratched his head and smiled. No, I'm actually not very worried about them. My daughter has a very good personality. She has been very popular since she was young, whether it's children or cats and dogs. And she doesn't really know how to reject others, so I'm a little worried that she might bring back 8 out of the 4 children. Poplar Fruit laughed happily. But the reality was not like that. Kiki was in trouble. Not only did the little sister not get close to her, but she also started crying. This caused Chi-Chi to be a little confused and frustrated. It's okay, it's okay. She's too young, only 2 years old. She doesn't know anything. The villager's aunt comforted her daughter while explaining to Kiki, she won't be able to act even if you let her. Why don't you find other children? Kiki nodded, confused. She followed Big Brother Dejun and followed the path the villager's aunt had pointed out. Kiki was a little depressed, but Dejun didn't feel anything. He bounced in front of Kiki and said, let's ignore that cowardly girl. Let's find other extras. Kiki was instantly unhappy. She stood in the same spot with a sullen face. She looked at Dejun angrily and said, Big Brother Dejun. You can't talk about the little sister like that. I'm not talking about you. Dejun was stunned and quickly waved his hand as he said. I'm not talking about me either. You said the little sister is a coward. That's not right. How can we talk bad about others behind their backs? If you're going to be like this, I won't play with you anymore. Kiki was already a little depressed just now. Now, it was as if a barrel of gunpowder had been ignited. Don't think that Chi-Chi won't get angry just because she's like an obedient baby. She's just a little more optimistic usually, and if you cross her bottom line, Chi-Chi will still flip out at you. At home and in kindergarten, Kiki lived in a positive environment. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei would also pay attention to their words and actions in front of her. Song Jiwen would occasionally curse, but after being reprimanded by the upright Kiki a few times, he didn't dare to mess around anymore. Dejun's words just now were indeed a little overboard. Although children spoke carelessly, Kiki's anger was justified. The audience secretly nodded their heads. Sorry, Kiki. I won't talk bad about others anymore. Dejun was scared speechless by Kiki. How did such a beautiful angel sister suddenly become a teacher waving a pointer? However, Kiki didn't seem to take it to heart. She had been pondering the reason why her charm was ineffective. Oh, I understand. As soon as Dejun's voice fell, Kiki suddenly became spirited. Her expression changed from sullen to carefree smile. So that's how it is. The little sister is too young. She doesn't want to leave her mama. When Kiki was young, she also wanted to be with Papa. Chi-Chi's words were said to big brother Dejun, whom she had just scolded with a dark expression. In truth, the little girl was overjoyed to find a friend to confide in because the knot in her heart had been untied. But her mood changed again and again, making Dejun completely confused. He was a little confused about whether Kiki was really angry or not. Little sister Kiki, then are we still good friends? Dejun asked carefully. He was a little worried. His mouth was pouting and he lowered his head. Of course. Kiki nodded and said, we are still good friends. Papa said, who doesn't make mistakes? If you can change your mistakes, it's the greatest virtue. Kiki shook her head and said, so if you know your mistakes and can change, then you are still a good child. I forgive you. This year, the little girl listened to her father recite a lot of ancient texts. Poplar Fruit would also explain to her some of the more simple ones that were suitable for her to learn. She actually used it here. This made the program crew and the audience a little surprised. What a scholarly family. Her mother was a math genius, and her father was a linguistics genius. They had already obtained a doctorate in English and were now studying for a second doctorate in Chinese. Kiki, who grew up in such a family, was also a little genius. Although she usually didn't show it, her every movement had the temperament of a little talented girl. Occasionally, she would show her talent, which made the audience like and envy her. Chapter 1187. Dejun didn't really understand the ancient language that Chi-Chi had chanted towards the end, but he understood the first part of her sentence. He could also tell that Chi-Chi was in a pretty good mood. It seemed that even though Kiki was angry earlier, she didn't take it to heart. We're still good friends. Haha. Dejun foolishly pulled Chi-Chi's arm and laughed. The mission continued. After walking for a while, Kiki and Dejun found a new target. This time, the child looked much older. She was about 3 or 4 years old. She was wearing a dark red cotton-padded jacket and her hair was braided. However, her hair wasn't long, so it was tied into cute goat horn braids. However, the family behind the new target was much bigger than before. Grandpa, Grandma, Dad, Mom, Uncle, aunts, a grandiose group of more than 10 people stood on the slope, smiling as if they were watching a show. When Dejun saw this, he wanted to retreat. However, Kiki only had eyes for my daughter. Even though Dejun wanted to pull her away, Kiki still mustered up her courage and pulled Dejun in front of them. Hello. Kiki was a little lacking in confidence. She tried hard to make herself smile and then clearly introduced her purpose for coming. We have to rehearse a show tonight and we need 4 children. 2 boys and 2 girls. Dejun interrupted. However, subconsciously, he was afraid of the crowd behind them. He pulled Kiki with all his strength and said, Kiki, let's go. Can she perform with us? Kiki was originally very strong, so Dejun had a hard time pulling her. However, this time, Dejun pulled Kiki's jacket and pulled Kiki's sleeves long. With the jacket being pulled, half of the little girl's shoulder was exposed. It was even strangling her neck, causing Kiki to have no choice but to take a few steps back. If she hadn't practiced Benben boxing and had a stable footing, she would have fallen. Lin Dajun, don't pull my sleeve. Kiki pouted unhappily. She even called out his name and said, and you can't interrupt others when they're talking. It's not polite. Dejun smiled awkwardly and quickly let go of his hand. Just now, Kiki's angry look still gave him a lingering fear. Now, although Kiki wasn't as scary as before, Dejun was still subconsciously worried that he would make more mistakes and make Kiki hate him. After Kiki finished speaking, she began to reflect. She remembered that she wasn't very polite just now. If Papa was here, he would definitely scold her. Kiki was a little hesitant, but the little girl was still kind-hearted. She apologized first, Brother Dajun, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called you that. Dajun was a little afraid of Kiki just now. He felt that she was as strict as his own father. However, at this moment, Kiki's apology suddenly made him feel a little ashamed. He was a big brother. Instead, he wasn't as sensible as his little sister. The more Dejun thought about it, the more he felt that he shouldn't have. He also lowered his head and apologized to Kiki. I'm sorry, Kiki. It's my fault. The atmosphere between the two was originally a little tense, but now that they had made such a scene, there was a kind of smile that seemed to erase the enmity. Kiki, I'll talk to her. Dejun boldly stood up. He pushed aside Kiki and walked forward. Looking at the little sister, he paused and turned to her mother and said, Auntie, can little sister come with us to act? Sure. To be able to show her face on TV, what a great thing. The villager aunts were full of smiles. They pushed and shoved my daughter, who was a little shy, in front of Kiki and the others. Great. I found one. Dejun pulled my daughter and returned in front of Kiki. After completing the task, he was in high spirits. His single eyelid eyes were brimming with pride. Big brother Dejun is awesome. Kiki praised and said, let's go finish the rest of the task together. Kiki was a little hot now. She didn't put her hands back into her sleeves and turned into a 4-handed little angel. However, before they could take 2 steps, my daughter seemed to feel that she had been kidnapped by someone else. She suddenly shook off Dejun's hand and turned around to run back. Dejun was dumbfounded. Kiki also stared blankly at my daughter's back. She was a little confused. Why did she run away again? She doesn't want to. Dejun was thrown away. He was a little discouraged and jumped on the ground. He was a little irritated. Kiki ignored him and turned around to walk back. Kiki, listen to me. Let's go find the next one, okay? Dejun quickly grabbed Kiki's shoulder and wanted to turn her around. This action was like a cabotin. However, how could Kiki be so easily held down by his little arm? She twisted her body and got rid of him. Her posture was vigorous and strong. She was as light as her father's taiji fist. Big brother Dejun, we can't do this. My papa said that you can't give up halfway. If you do one thing and stop halfway, then the second thing will be the same. Then, you won't be able to do the same thing in the future. Kiki patiently explained. She recited the words that Poplar Fruit taught her before. You see, we didn't manage to invite the previous little sister. If we give up on this little sister, then we may never be able to complete the task that Papa gave us. Kiki said. Yes, then what should we do? Dejun began to look at his feet. He felt that this task was very difficult. These children were not as easy to talk to as he imagined. So we have to explain to her. Tell her that acting is actually very fun. Kiki said. Acting is not fun. Dejun was very honest, but he also spoiled the fun. Okay. Then I'll go talk to her. Kiki stretched out her hands from her sleeves. This way, it wouldn't be so awkward. She patted her two little hands on the side of her body and turned around to walk towards my daughter who had just run back to her mother's side. Look, the little sister came to find you again. The villager aunt took her daughter's hand and greeted her. Look, the little sister is so good to you. Hello. Kiki didn't dare to get too close for fear of scaring the little sister. She just waved at the little sister who was leaning on her mother's body from afar. Although the little sister was still very shy, she turned around and hugged her mother's thigh. However, she dared to stick her head out and look at Kiki. Her face also revealed a trace of bashful smile. Your braid is so beautiful. It looks like Neza. Kiki racked her brains to get closer to this little sister, but this needs to be done step by step. Kiki touched her hair and said, my hair is not good. It's very soft when it grows. No, sister is more beautiful, right? No, don't you think so? The aunt said with a smile. The little sister responded. She nodded, and the nervous expression on her face gradually disappeared. Chapter 1188. I didn't think about it. Poplar Fruit sat in front of the black and red curtain. He shook his head with a smile and said, I really didn't expect Kiki to be so serious about things. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, maybe it has something to do with the way we educated her at home. Bebe wouldn't let me scold her. My sister and I grew up under the strict education of our parents, so it's not wrong to listen to Bebe when it comes to education. If you do something wrong, you will reason with her, tell her why she is wrong, and tell her what she should do. Poplar Fruit's words were very popular on the internet, especially among the group of young mothers. He was praised as a model of family education. You can't just scold her on the spot. She needs to be respected. You can wait first. When she wants to, or is willing to communicate with you, then you can talk slowly. Then, it will be easier for her to accept. Poplar Fruit recalled and said with a smile, I know she listened to me, but I didn't expect her to memorize what I said. Kiki's role in communicating with Dejun was a bit like Poplar Fruit's role. However, she was not as skillful as Poplar Fruit, but she was patient. Compared to Poplar Fruit, Kiki had an aura that made people want to get close to her and listen to her. Therefore, Lin Dajuan, who had been going against his father on the show, was subdued by Kiki without any resistance. Lin Yongjian couldn't figure it out. I know. I heard it from the staff. Lin Yongjian was also interviewed that night. I really don't accompany Dajuan enough. There is also a problem with the way we communicate with each other. Yanghua and I have discussed this in private. When I return, I will watch this episode seriously and think about it carefully. I want to see if there is anything that we, as fathers, have not done well enough. The interview was interspersed with the process of Kiki and Dejun completing the task of finding extras. The audience suddenly realized that something was wrong. What did Lin Yongjian say about the private communication between him and Poplar Fruit? He had to leave this matter for later and explain it to them slowly. Returning to the scene where Kiki and Dejun were doing the quest, after a few minutes of communication, Kiki finally managed to get the little girl to lower her guard. The little girl held Kiki's hand while listening to Kiki's explanation. Even Dejun, who was the most impatient, came back. He lowered his head and played with the stones with his feet while listening attentively. Let me tell you, our performance this time is very fun. In addition to me and him, we need 4 more children. We are going to play the role of small animals. Kiki looked at the little sister's admiring eyes and said more energetically. I am Ba Ba Ma, he is, I'm Woof Woof. Dejun finally found a little sense of existence. He took the opportunity to get closer and began to participate in Kiki's chat. Yes, Nyo-Nyo, what do you want to play? Kiki held the little sister's hand with her left hand and bent down with her right hand on her knee. I know, she wants to play the role of a pig. Dejun began to interrupt again. I don't want to play the role of a pig. The little sister pouted and said. It's okay, it's okay. Kiki was afraid that she would cry, so she quickly waved her hand and said, you can also choose what you want to play. But the little sister didn't know so much. It was even more difficult for her to choose. How about you play the role of a sheep, Nyo-Nyo? I like sheep very much. Sheep are so cute. Kiki gave her an idea. Nyo-Nyo, how about playing the role of a sheep? The villager ant also asked. The little sister nodded. How does the sheep bleat? Nyo-Nyo, can you demonstrate it for me? Chi-Chi asked. Ba, ba. The little sister bleated twice, and then lowered her head shyly. Yes, Nyo-Nyo is also great. Kiki gave Nyo-Nyo a thumbs up. Nyo-Nyo looked up at Kiki and grinned. Kiki, I think her bleat is similar to your horse. Dejun habitually spoiled the fun. Nyo-Nyo, you learned it wrong. That's how horses bleat. I'll teach you. From the crowd of onlookers just now, an old man in his 50s or 60s walked down. He grinned with a missing tooth and said, horses should bleat like this. Bleat, 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 bleat. Needless to say, the old man must have often dealt with livestock. This skill of his was perfect. However, Kiki learned very quickly. She followed the old man a few times and almost mastered it. Even if she was a little bit worse, no one would care. Thank you, Grandpa. Kiki brought Dejun and bowed politely to the old man. Kiki dug around and took out a piece of paper from her pocket. However, it was not a secret book, but a diagram of the address that her father gave her. Auntie, look, this is where we live. In the afternoon, can you bring Nyo-Nyo to our place to rehearse? Kiki asked. Aren't you rehearsing now? That villager auntie probably wanted to push her daughter over now. There were not many opportunities to appear on TV. Not yet. Kiki waved her hand and said, we haven't completed the mission yet. We still need to continue to look for the other 3 children, so, that's right, Chi-Chi, let's go quickly. Dejun couldn't hold back his temper and shouted. However, his voice became softer and softer towards the end. He remembered that Chi-Chi had said that it was impolite for him to interrupt others. Okay, then we'll see you in the afternoon. Nyo-Nyo, say goodbye to sister. The villager auntie smiled and said. Goodbye auntie, goodbye Nyo-Nyo. Kiki waved her hand and said. Don't say goodbye, Nyo-Nyo wants to play with sister. The little sister didn't cooperate again. But this time, not only did she not run away, she seemed to want to stick to Kiki. If someone could hear the villager auntie's heart, she would definitely sigh, Nyo-Nyo, you're finally enlightened. However, all of this depended on Kiki and Dejun's intentions. Dejun wasn't willing to do the mission with a burden. Moreover, such a little girl would definitely give Dejun a headache if she made a fuss. However, Kiki, who had a sister complex in her heart, had already walked over. She happily held the little sister's hand and said, Then how about this, Nyo-Nyo also go with sister and brother to do the mission. Mama will follow. The little sister wanted her mother to follow and couldn't bear to let go of her mother's hand. Mama can't follow. The mission is for children to complete by themselves. They can't have Mama following them. Kiki waved her hand and said, How about Nyo-Nyo play with sister first? If Nyo-Nyo misses Mama, Kiki will take Nyo-Nyo to find Mama, okay? I have a very beautiful crown at home. I can lend it to Nyo-Nyo to wear. Nyo-Nyo will definitely become a super beautiful sheep princess. Kiki gestured. Her beautiful face, at this moment, had a kind of warm power, making the little sister unable to move her eyes away. She let go of her mother's hand and took a step closer to Kiki. Then, Kiki, what about you? Dejun asked, You're also a princess. Yes, I'm also a princess, but I'm Princess Elsa. Princess Elsa doesn't need a crown. She has very, very powerful magic. Kiki's thoughts suddenly jumped to Frozen. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.